move my coffee so I don't put my gavel in it. That's a common
That'd
problem.
be good.
We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Would everyone rise? And today's invocation will be done by Pastor Doug Warren. Please come forward.
Let's pray. Father God, I call upon you as the King over all creation and ask that you would hear me now because of the perfect work of Jesus Christ, your Son. As your representative, I cry out to you on behalf of these city councilors and ask that you would be honored and praised in the work done here today. Thank you for these men and women and their service to Bonita Springs and her citizens. We're grateful to each one of them as individuals and for all the gifts you have bestowed upon them. Lord, we as a people have organized ourselves as a city, acknowledging, quote, your grace, unquote, as one of the foundational realities that enables us to benefit from local self-government. Help us to not become presumptuous in the blessings of your grace, but rather make us more and more grateful to you for all that you give us. Lord God, forgive us for the ways we have failed to serve our fellow man. I do now implore your aid and direction. Help each one of these to use what you've given them in ways that would be true to the role you've given them. Thank you for appointing them to represent the people of our beloved city. Protect them from both internal and external influences that would have them act in any way not conforming to your perfect character. Allow them to care for their fellow citizens with justice and truth. Give them wisdom, discernment, and skill in leading this city. Guard them against overreaching their power and help them to honor you in all that they do, together here as a council. Bless them and work through them, Holy Spirit, in accomplishing your will. For it is in the matchless name of Jesus that I pray. Amen.
Amen. Councilman Slacka, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Be my honor. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Councilman McIntosh.
Here.
Councilwoman Martin. Here. Councilman Slakta.
Here.
Mayor Nelson.
Here.
Councilman Simmons.
Here.
Councilman Gibson.
Here.
Councilman Longcroft.
Here.
Okay, good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Mayor.
All right, that's the best we can do. That's fine. Okay, now public comment on agenda items. Anyone wishing to speak to an agenda item this morning, please come forward.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Council, and fellow Bonitians. My name is Jesse Purton, for the record, hailing from the Great District 2. I'd like to comment on Agenda Item 14A regarding amending the City Code of Conduct for its elected officials by adding a drug-free policy and potentially having to use a breathalyzer prior to meetings. Though I agree with our city officials should not be intoxicated by drugs or alcohol prior to taking their seats, I disagree with the idea of amending the Code of Conduct policy. It is government overreach, which we just prayed about. There have been no incidents that I'm aware of any member who's sitting on this board being called into question in regard to this matter. Not only is it an overreach, the idea of a breathalyzer prior to the meeting should be intrusive and offensive. If an officer pulls somebody over, they are only asked to take a breathalyzer when there's reasonable suspicion the driver has been drinking. So why, without reasonable suspicion, would we ask our elected officials to submit to such a request simply for showing up to work? Why should we be operating under the assumption of guilt towards the people we put in those chairs to represent us? This type of overregulation is a microcosm of the progressive agenda that tries to eat away at our freedoms piece by piece. We have issues like the DRGR, a potential flyover in economic development, but here we are spending time on an issue that has not even been entertained by any of the other governing bodies in Lee or Collier County. Any swipe at an individual's liberty is a serious issue. The United States Constitution protects individuals against unreasonable search and seizure without reasonable level of suspicion or probable cause based on evidence. I cannot support asking the people we elected to openly sacrifice their constitutionally protected freedoms, especially for a single member's personal satisfaction or political gain. If a member wants to seem like the moral leader of the group and take on an important issue, I recommend making an issue that does not set a precedent for attacking individual liberties. This is a serious issue, not some bullet point for inspiring mayoral candidate. With that being said, I urge you not to back down. The point is not whether you would or you would not voluntarily do this. The point is asking you to do this is wrong. Do not be the first governing body in Lee and Collier County to set this kind of precedent. It is the little battles like this all over the country, every single day, that define what the next generation knows as America. When in doubt, I say go with God and go with the Constitution. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Good morning, City Council. Jude Reichenthal from Old Bonita. I'd like to speak to the same item on the agenda about the requiring a drug test. First of all, I'd like to point out that the article in the Naples Daily News asking the mayor and the councilman about an item currently on the agenda is a direct violation of the open meetings Florida law. Mayor Nelson, in signaling his position about this item, is clearly in direct violation of the law, and this should be taken out perhaps by the state attorney. Now, as far as the Mr. Councilman McIntosh's position itself, I have some reservations about it. I mean, I understand his motivation is good. He wants to, make sure our city councilmen are performing up to par, doing the in the interest of the people. However, it's sort of like letting closing the barn door after the horse has already escaped. A much better way to get us a better government would be perhaps to have things, before people are elected. We could have things like an intelligence test, an ethics test, a civics test. Those would be good things to have, and they would bring us better council people. I think you ought to consider that perhaps. Another improvement to city government would be public financing of local campaigns by the city. This way, the person with the most money, especially brought from out of town or whatever, wherever the money comes from, won't be the one to win the election, but the person with the best ideas. That's all I have to say today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please. Anyone else wish to speak to any agenda item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment, and we'll go to proclamations and presentations. Let's see here. All right. Barbara Scarnato, could you please come forward? Wow, these microphones are actually working today. Either that or my hearing is actually working today. Oh, how you doing? You get a hug?
Yes, thanks.
All right, before I read this proclamation, I have to tell you, Barbara works over at the middle school over there. Now, she doesn't work over there because it's a job. She works over there, I can guarantee you, because she loves what she's doing. She loves this group of kids over there. And and what a group they are. I mean, with the Honor Society she works with, they're always excelling. They're excited to go to school. They're excited to work with Barbara there. And Barbara, you are just the best. And now it's proven that you are actually the best. I was right for once. Okay, come over here. There, stage center, right here, right? I said, whereas the city of Bonita Springs would like to extend their congratulations to Barbara Scarnato for being named as Teacher of the Year for 2014. And whereas Ms. Scarnato was named the Outstanding Middle School Math Teacher of the Year by the Lee County School District and was selected to become a member of the school district's A+ team. And whereas Mrs. Scarnato is a peer teacher that also heads up the National Junior Honor Society. And whereas Mrs. Scarnato works tirelessly to ensure all the students are on the right track to ensure success, and is a mentor teacher to new teachers in the Apples program, as well as supervising teacher for interns from Edison State College and Florida Gulf Coast University. And whereas Ms. Scarnato is also recognized for her after-school tutoring programs and runs the work detail program on campus for students with discipline problems. Along with her NJHS students, she also assisted in fundraising and creating the outdoor classroom and butterfly garden. And as a result, they won the 2014 Outstanding Service Projects Award. And whereas Ms. Scarnato has shown great leadership and has received the Teacher of the Year award. Now, therefore, I, Ben Nelson, As mayor of the city of Bonita Springs, do recognize and acknowledge Barbara Scarnato is the Bonita Springs Middle School of the Arts Teacher of the Year for 2014 and encourage all citizens to congratulate her on her accomplishments. Thank you so much for what you've done. Please give her the biggest of hands. Would you like to say something?
It's been an honor to work here in Bonita. I've been here for 13 years. It's like my second home because I probably spend as much time in Bonita as I do in my house. And I've had the pleasure of working with so many people here on the council. It's such an honor. And teaching is definitely, as you say, it's not a job, it's a calling. I absolutely love what I do every day. I love seeing my students be able to go to that next level. I love seeing the fact that in my National Junior Honor Society, I have produced some amazing leaders in our community, and I hope to continue to do that over the next couple of years. I want to thank the council for last year, because without your support in our outdoor butterfly garden and classroom, it's really cool. We are one of the top 4 in the entire country. That's why we were awarded that. And the only middle school in the United States to have won it 5 times. So it's really amazing.
Mr. Mayor?
Hello.
I
Yes, sir.
noticed out in the audience, the middle school principal, Linda Mitchell, is here as well. You might want to...
Oh, wait. You're good? All right. You are good. You are good. Obviously, you hire great people, right? Thank you so much. I almost fell on my chair for the first time after shooting off my mouth about falling out of chairs. That would have been funny and rather timely, right? Okay, anyway, receive the Bonita Springs Estero Economic Development Council quarterly report. Mr. Vince Montarelli, would you like to do that?
Yes, Mayor, thank you very much.
Excellent.
My name is Vince Montarelli, and I am chairman of the Bonita Springs and Estero Economic Development Council. My day job is Director of Advertising for community publications at Naples Daily News, Bonita Daily News, and the Banner. I'm honored to be able to come before this group as the representative of the Economic Development Council and our efforts, but first off, I just want to say that the honor is truly mine because the staff of both the Economic Development Council and the city, as well as the volunteers, and I mentioned them last time I was in front of you, but are the exemplary part of what I'm about to tell you. And I'm going to give you some highlights, some numbers to start with. I'll provide some color behind those for you, and then I have a special guest of ours to tell you about his personal experience. So, first off, since the last time I was here, I just want to update you with some numbers. Over the past 6 months, we at the EDC have provided 22 clients with advocacy, and that advocacy includes working with the city on permitting, zoning, rezoning, the incentives we have, employee relocation, general community integration. So 14 of those clients have requested site selection services to expand into or within Bonita Springs. 4 clients have needed general information or wanted to let us know about their property that they have for sale. 7 clients requested and were provided with general public relations support, so we're helping them with their PR. And I'll, again, get into some specifics on what we're doing for people. 5 clients are categorized as attraction candidates, and I'll just take a moment to reiterate. We're essentially an expansion and retention program. But a natural result of the strong retention and expansion efforts that we make is attraction. And so 5 of our clients we currently categorizing as attraction candidates. And 10 of those clients are categorized as expansion candidates. Our focus this year has been on marketing and essentially being the sales arm for economic development for the city, for Bonita Springs and Estero. So social media has been a big part of what we've done. Since December, we've gone from 151 Twitter followers to 199. We've increased our LinkedIn member contacts. We've almost doubled them from 167, or more than doubled them from 167 to 350. We put out 2 to 3 weekly posts featuring positive news of business and economic growth in Bonita and Estero. There's a lot of people interested in what it is that we have to say, and that's exciting for us. We've gone from 2,200 email contacts receiving our newsletter to now 6,172. We've got an open rate of about 28%, and in my business, with what it is that we do, and I just checked yesterday with our marketing director at Naples Daily News. We send out a lot of emails with a lot of news. 28% is a phenomenal open rate, and that just tells us kind of what we know. On an annual basis, we do a survey. The Chamber of Commerce does a survey. Economic development is really, really high on people's lists of what it is that they're interested in and what they want to see from organizations like ours. And then we totally overhauled our EDC website. We've updated the copywriting. We've got a new photo collection and selection. We've integrated the web link job and resume bank. Our size up tool for demographic searches is really, really robust. We made a site selection option available directly from our pages. So site selectors and people who are interested in either coming to Bonita Springs or moving within Bonita Springs can go directly to our website and self-serve in a lot of cases. So that kind of activity has been the hallmark of our, at least our first few months this year. Just to add some color to it, actually, when I printed this out, we had 4 confidentiality agreements in effect. We just secured a 5th confidentiality agreement, and so the total number of leads handled by the EDC to date has just hit 100, and so there's a lot of activity taking place. Just some specifics. We've provided advocacy and support to Shaw Development. Shaw Development needed to expand, and they needed to look at all options, and it was not looking like their current location in Burnwood was going to be the best option for them. But we put our machine together, the EDC machine, the city machine, and I'm here to tell you that you may already know, but they are going to expand within their current footprint. That retains over 140 engineering and light manufacturing jobs, and they plan to add 15 to 20 new jobs this year. We assisted with the permitting process for RLR Investments. That's the Promenade. Their continued property revitalization and reopening of their outdoor restaurant and bar services. Advocacy assistance, CRM companies, which is the new owners of the Burnwood portfolio of properties. Providing advocacy assistance with their traffic light request, and also looking with a group called Medigap for Seniors, CMS Insurance Agency. They're having a corporate relocation, bringing 7 jobs to Florida, plans to create 5 to 10 additional jobs by 2015. So that's some examples of local business retention and expansion assistance. Relocation assistance. Global Tech LED, we helped them out with their new business permitting for their expansion. They transformed the Rice building on Old 41 into a new light manufacturing facility. They brought 25 jobs to our area, and they're seeking to add an additional 25 jobs in the coming year. By the way, that's my special guest, and you'll hear from Paul from Global Tech LED shortly. We're providing a potential new pharmacy with business startup assistance, demographic information and resources. We're making personal introductions to city and county officials to make it easier for them to start up their business. We have a Pennsylvania-based restaurant with potential relocation to the area, providing area information on doing business, our school system, et cetera. Continuing to leverage our Chamber of Commerce Job and Resume Bank to assist Hertz with corporate relocation and trailing spouse job recruitment. And of course, we have site selection services. We're currently helping a wholesale building supply with their site selection services here in Bonita Springs and Estero. Advocacy efforts. We took a trip to Tallahassee, and a couple of you came along with us, and it was a legislative advocacy trip. We met with 6 elected officials, Senators Benequisto and Richter, Representatives Fitzenhagen, Rodriguez, Dane Eagle, and Matthew Caldwell. We spoke about the needs of the business community, and we urged them to vote for pro-business legislation to support our need for a hospital. We also met with representatives from the Department of Economic Opportunity, Enterprise, Florida. What was interesting there was we're telling our story, we're telling about our successes, and we're telling it to people who are in our business in Tallahassee. The outcome of that effort is in their quarterly newsletter, they held up Bonita Springs, and this is a testament again to the staff, they held up Bonita Springs as the shining example of streamlined permitting. And so we're getting that kind of press, and that's the kind of press that, again, site selectors and others who may be looking for a business-friendly community, where better than to get that at the state level. We also spoke with the Florida Department of Education, their commissioner. We talked about educational attainment, increased funding, and in particular workforce development. So we continued our advocacy in Tallahassee, speaking directly to the Florida Department of Transportation for a traffic light at the Riverview corporate complex. I mentioned some of the statistics on our marketing and public relations initiatives. We completed an email marketing campaign to site selectors across the country, which generated for us 2 new industry relationships, and so getting started and getting in the focus of people who are selecting sites around the country. I mentioned we launched a complete website overhaul. The idea there is to increase the awareness of the services offered by our organization and the benefits of doing business in Bonita Springs. We doubled our distribution, like I said, of our monthly e-news, and that has been something that I personally have gotten great feedback on for those efforts. We took our show on the road. So since the last time we talked here, we went ahead and we facilitated 2 community meet and greet events. So we held a meet and greet event in Bonita Springs. We held one in Estero. We're informing residents and professionals about our organization's accomplishments, our services, and our mission in the in the region. We'll continue to host events like this to encourage area businesses to get involved, share leads of businesses that need assistance, and help the community grow. And I would encourage any of you, if there is an area within your in neighborhoods and communities that you want us to come out and speak to residents or businesses, particularly as next season starts to come in, we want to be able to tell our story so that others can be part of the machine that we are, the sales machine. We're working with the Southwest Florida Economic Development Alliance, and we're assisting in development of a comprehensive business plan for the region. So we're making sure that, as that funnel, county-wide or region-wide, that we are the experts for that regional effort, and that we're able to take advantage of any of those regional efforts that are taking place. I want to mention, too, that both the CEO and I are participating in Lee School District Partners in Education Academy. So we're spending several Fridays in the school system. Most of these Fridays are at schools. The most recent one was at Bonita Springs Elementary. And what we're trying to do is better speak to workforce development, to choice, to all the great things really that Lee County School District, because as a business like a Hertz comes into our area and is considering our area, one of the top questions they have is about the school district and is about how the schools are. And because of the uniqueness of the choice scenario in Lee County, we want to be able to speak very, very confidently that that the school system is working quite well. So we're immersing ourselves in that, and then we're also working to provide mentors in the school system and providing externships so that school teachers can come to our businesses and over the summer and immerse themselves in what it is that we're doing in the business community. So Christine and I will graduate from that in June. Other than that, there's a whole list of in the news, things that we have been very, very successful as the sales machine for economic development in Bonita Springs and Estero, been very, very successful in having positive press. And so everything from the advocacy for insurance relief to the global tech LED moving to Bonita, to economy spurring growth in new technology, we are seeing a just and I'm sure, I'm hoping that you're seeing it in the press that that the PR machine is really ramping up and is really getting its feet under it, and we are getting great traction in public relations and in the news. Use permit activity year to date. I could just tell you that in 2013, the total was 613 employees, 48 permits. I'm sorry, 129 permits. Already to date, we have 48 permits for 509 employees as far as permit activity as just one metric. And so 2014 is shaping up to be quite robust from permit activity and employee growth in the area. I think every time I come in front of you, I use the number of impact fee savings, and that number has not necessarily changed from the last time I came. It's just under $400,000 of impact fee savings, and that's a number that we continue to report. I want to also remind the group that in September, if you'll have us back, what we would like to be able to do is give our annual report and be able to bring a PowerPoint, go into some real nitty-gritty detail on the numbers and the metrics that we're using as what we call success. But this is our quarterly report to our investors. Little high level, but I'm here to answer questions that I can or take suggestions. But before I do that, I would like to introduce Paul Schmidt. Paul is the Vice President and Chief Operating Officer. I'd mentioned Global Tech LED. That's the company that has renovated and has moved into the rice insulation facility on Old 41. Paul is here to just speak to some of his experiences. So, Paul?
Thank you. Good morning. Like Vince said, Global Tech LED is a 6-year-old LED manufacturer. We began in Naples, Florida. We just recently moved to Bonita Springs about a little over a month ago. We brought 25 employees with us, and in that month, we've added 8. We continue to grow. I'd like to thank the City of Bonita Springs, the Chamber of Commerce, the EDC for the warm welcome, the assistance in getting settled in here, and the introduction to our neighbors. Second quarter sales are up, and we anticipate to keep growing in the city and going from there. Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you. And I'll entertain any questions and answer what I possibly can, or any comments or any direction as an investor. Please.
Stephen.
Vince,
Yes.
First of all, most of us think about economic development as expansion, and I know the last time I spoke with Christine, she made very clear how important retention is. And so I want to thank you very much about Shaw Development, because we could have lost the big organization. And, I can think of two other places that, it's very important to keep those businesses in place. So, and I thank you for the speakers thing, because I know we got Christine for the fall at the Bonita Beach Improvement Association. She'll be speaking there, so that'll be a good group to meet with. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, any other questions, comments?
I don't
Janet.
have a question, but I would like to make a comment. And that was because I was at Tallahassee, and I was there when we met with the members from the statewide Economic Development Board. And I do want to say that it was pretty awesome to be there and to have them say, we've heard about you guys. So I want to thank you, our Economic Development Council members, and also the city for our commitment and our staff's commitment, our express permitting, and commitment to the job retention and filling those vacancies. And because we've done that, we're getting a lot of wonderful statewide, nationally recognized press from that. So Bonita Springs is on the map in a good way, and that's a good thing for all of us. So I want to just thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you back. I mean, this machine is not running as it currently is without the major investment of the city. So, thank you back.
It works.
It does.
Well, not only the major investment, but the major investment in time and the partnership that you've developed and the relationships between all of you and everybody there at City Hall, Arlene, Carl, John, everybody. That's what's really, I think, in my mind, has really made it work, is that everybody dividing up the chores and making sure that nobody really slips through the cracks there. That's the kind of service people expect. And I want to thank everybody for that, our staff and everybody else. So any other questions, comments? You all good? All right. Thank you very much for your
We'll see you
presentation.
soon. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. And now we're at item C there. Who's going to handle that? Carl, is that you?
Yes, we're actually going to have members of the Community Development Department come up and give this presentation. This has to do with cell towers, and we're getting additional interest in these things, and staff just feels the city needs to get out in front of this a little bit more, and we're looking for your direction today. So with that, Jen?
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you. You can do a little better than that.
I'll quit it.
Good
That's
morning.
Morning, Jen.
It's hump day.
That's my job. You're taking my job from me.
Somebody's got to, step up. Good morning.
The only thing I get to do.
For the record, Jennifer DeFalla Hagen, Community Development. We are here today to discuss cell towers. You have a green sheet before you that identifies the current regulations that we have in effect do not necessarily reflect the current technology and techniques out there for the wireless industry. And everyone out there is looking to obviously stay up to trend with their technology, their need and demand for their data requirements, and some of them are looking to update existing wireless facilities within the city. The Land Development Code that regulates these was last amended in 2004, and therefore staff is seeking guidance in updating the following criteria, which includes our land use compatibility, location criteria, definitions, and development standards for these facilities. I already stated why we're here. Again, staff is looking to have council provide direction regarding the land use compatibility, location criteria, definitions, and development standards for these facilities. So we have put together a presentation that is going to identify some of the things that we're running into as applications are presented to us. But first and foremost, I want to introduce one of our newest members of community development, is Michael Fegan. Michael Fegan is a recent graduate with his master's degree in public administration from Florida Gulf Coast. He also is adjunct professor over at Florida Gulf Coast, and we are thrilled to have him part of our team. He is acting as planner one. He does all of our planner on-call walk-ins and telephone calls, so if you call over, most likely you'll get Mike on the other line, and he is excellent. So with that, he has put together most of this presentation, all of the research and the presentation that you will see today. I'd like to introduce him and let him take over and give you some of the background.
Good morning, Council.
Good morning, Professor. How are
Oh,
you?
thank you.
Well,
Doing
Michael-
very well. Thank you very much. I like
Michael,
that.
first
Thank
of all, how do you spell your last name?
Fiigon.
Dargan. I was hoping it was Egon because you look like the guy in Ghostbusters a lot.
I'll take that as a compliment, I guess.
I was like, oh, this is awesome, but not so much now. But go ahead.
Thank you.
You think?
So
Egon.
just starting off with a little bit
Just
of
call him
background
Professor.
on the issue. Why is my button working? There we go. Okay.
Still fun.
Just some background and some history that we're talking about with the issue at hand here. Some statistics that we could all sort of easily digest and understand regarding the amount of people in this country that utilize cell phone and cell phone technology. It's probably a safe assumption to make that all of you on council probably have a cell phone, as most of your constituency in the audience probably does. Pew Research statistics agree. 90% of Americans right now, or adults I should say, utilize cell phones. That's up from 65% in 2004.
Wow.
Again, putting 2004 in there as a target date, since that was the last time our wireless communications portion of the code was amended. 58% of those phones are considered smartphones, meaning it's a cell phone that has more than one function. It can do word processing, internet searches, you can tweet, MySpace, Facebook, all that fun stuff. And 34% of these mobile users consider themselves mobile only, meaning they don't utilize a landline phone or an at-home computer. They have their cell phone, that's it, that's their gateway. This was a pretty shocking statistic to come across, that 70% of current cell phone users have experienced dropped calls, and 34% of those are frequent, meaning more than 3 times a week. That was a pretty shocking statistic. Some of the industry stated reasons as to why that would be the case. One main reason would be an overload of calls going to a specific cell tower, and the second reason would be the dead zone, which is more than just a TV show. It is a lapse of coverage in a given area. Tower coverage depends on the type and function of the tower. Not all cell towers are equal. The 2 main types are macro cells and micro cells. Macro, of course, meaning it's a bigger tower, wider range of coverage, roughly 10 miles, give or take. Your micro cells, shorter towers, 2 miles, give or take, of coverage. They tend to be more resonant in suburban areas. Currently, right now, we have 11 towers within the city of Bonita Springs, 13 in the greater Bonita area overall. And the current code simply has not been able to keep pace with this increase in wireless technology. Again, the last time our code was amended was in 2004, a decade ago, amending these submittal requirements for these facilities. And over the last 12 months, staff has received an additional 3 applications for new or expansion of existing wireless facilities. So it is something that we are dealing with. This is a map of the current cell tower locations that we have in the city and in the greater area. Of course, a couple of those stars aren't within the city limits, but due to the range of these towers, it's fair to say Bonita residents could be pulling signals from these towers if in the area. So just wanted to give you a little visual there. Okay. The purpose and intent of our code is pretty straightforward. First of all, you want to minimize the impact on surrounding areas when you're installing these facilities. You don't want to make them overly obtrusive in that sense. But you also want to accommodate for the need and the demand of these facilities. Again, going back to the statistics of just how many people utilize cell phones and cell phone technology, it is a growing need. You want to provide for the location and co-location on buildings as well, not just talking about sticking a tower in the ground, utilizing some of the taller buildings perhaps in the city as a place for a cell antenna. What else do we have? Encourage the coordination between service providers, protecting the character and scale of the residential districts especially. And, of course, covering the federal laws and guidelines that are carried down through this through the Telecommunications Act of 1996, of course. And, again, just overall establishing development regulations and location criteria. That's what our code strives to do regarding these facilities. The evolution of the cell tower, going from, I suppose, least modern to most modern, if you will. All the way over to the left, you have your guy-wired facility. Typically, those are the tallest of all the cell structures, several hundred feet high, usually over 200 feet for sure. Moving down the line, you have your self-supporting towers, the 3 different kinds there. and monopole seems to be the most prevalent tower used nowadays across the country, including in Bonita. That's the tower that you would see most around the city, would be the monopole. Usually it's the shorter tower, usually around 75 feet, give or take. Some current definitions that you would find in our current code as it is right now, the two main types that our code identifies would be the monopole, which we just saw on the previous slide, and a stealth facility, which we'll discuss in a second. The monopole, as our code defines it, would be a style of standalone supporting structure that is composed of a single shaft attached to a foundation. This type of structure is designed to support itself without the use of guy wires, okay, or stabilization devices. It's a much more streamlined approach and style to a cell tower. Stealth communications facilities, basically you design a cell tower so that it doesn't look like that. Pretty straightforward there. It appears to have a secondary or alternative function, whether that is a steeple, a bell tower, a flagpole, which we have up off of Imperial, actually, one of our cell towers that are there, a cupola, light standard, and again, the main goal of a stealth facility is that it doesn't look like a cell tower. It looks like something else. It blends into the built-in natural environment a bit better. Monopoles and stealth facilities, they do have different application requirements and different development regulations. So we need to make sure that the distinction between the two is clear. On page 269, actually, of our current land development code in chapter 4, it says that, again, stealth facilities must be designed to replicate a non-wireless facility like a silo, a flagpole, or a tree. And tree was sort of an interesting one to look at because if you have a 149-foot monopole tree like that picture would show, surrounded by 50-foot trees, is that really compatible? Does that blend into the natural environment well? So that was just, and that's a real picture, by the way, of a monopine, I believe, up in the Clearwater, Tampa area. Yeah. So just sort of put that on there for you guys.
So realistic.
Right?
So realistic.
Yes, it is. Yep. Find the cell tower. And with that in mind, we move to the second portion of the presentation, which features Ms. Jennifer again coming in and talking about the nuts and bolts of the issues here.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome, Mike.
Hello again. I'm going to go back to Mike's picture real quick. I just want you to take note of this tower because an application is going to be coming forward in front of you in July for that exact thing. So, noted. Again, the reason why are we looking at this now? In addition to the fact that the code is 10 years old, we have two applications that are coming forward to you. One, again, will be heard by Zoning Board in June and will come to City Council in July. The second one is still in the sufficiency phase. So that one has not come to fruition as of yet, but both of them are requesting the maximum height that you can request, which is 149 feet. So again, you're looking at the possibility of this tower being 149 feet, sticking up now. Kind of reminds me of a Lego tree, which is kind of interesting. But if you're looking to blend into the natural environment with your pines, usually maxing out in this area about 50 feet, we're looking at 100 feet over a natural tree. So it poses some problems as to if an application is coming in saying they are stealth, it can be interpreted, are they or are they not? And so that's why we're here today to discuss that. Again, we also have a couple other issues that are coming up. These, both applications where these towers are being proposed fall within zoning districts, agricultural zoning districts, which allow for a 75 to 149 foot tower by special exception approval. Thus, they have to come in. Staff is in the process of making sure that they meet all of the code requirements for that tower. However, the thing that we are observing that is starting to towers fall within residential land use categories. So you have to, again, look at the compatibility issue of whether a tower that is 149 feet, whether it be a monopole, a tree, a bell tower, is that appropriate within a residential area, and does it meet the character of the residential area? So to highlight some of our current zoning and land use regulations, I wanted to start with zoning. When people come in and look at uses that are allowed, they primarily will look at your zoning district. And as both applicants that are coming forward with these applications have done, they have found zoning districts within the city that do permit 149-foot towers if they meet the requirements and approval of a special exception approval. So again, our zoning districts look at the height of the tower. The intent is to also consider land uses, but if you look at just gray and white matter, the white and black matter is that these towers per zoning would be permissible up to 149 feet in an agricultural zoning district. In residential, 75 is the max height. So the land use categories that both of these towers fall within, again, are residential. The first one being in San Carlos Estates, which is low-density residential, allows for pretty single-family homes for the most part on larger rural sites. The second tower that's being proposed falls within the medium-density residential, which is a little more dense of an area, but again, primarily intended for residential land uses in that area. So the problem here falls, while zoning permits towers with a height availability of up to 149 feet, the comp plan limits the allowable land to that of residential. So both of these towers are coming in land use areas that do not, that prohibit them to be there, basically, because they're not residential in character. So the problem falls on the land use prohibits these towers. However, the zoning district does allow for them if they receive special exception approval. So I like to use this slide because when you're looking at land use, lots of people fail to realize that it's actually the land use that ultimately determines the character and the regulations that you would look at, whether the use would be appropriate. It's the zoning district that lays out some of the parameters for that use, and ultimately it's the land development code that sets the specific technical aspects that we look at as reviewers. So if you have applications coming in that, yes, meet the intent of the zoning district, however, prohibited by the land use, you start to see a conflict. So again, that conflict, just to recap, is the zoning code addresses height regulations by districts. So if you go back to this proportion of our code, anybody that comes in, we have to look at the maximum height that's allowed within that area. So most of your other zoning districts that allow the higher towers would be your commercial and your industrial zoning districts, which most of the towers that you saw earlier in the presentation do fall within. Residential, again, allows up to 75 feet, and agricultural allows for 149 feet. However, some of the areas of the city, as we all know, are zoned ag, but are primarily residential neighborhoods. So again, zoning addresses height of the tower, and the land use addresses the tower compatibility. So as we start to look at some of these applications and notice some of these trends and these conflicts that we're starting to see surface, we're wondering if a more efficient way to address the maximum overall height of these wireless tower facilities may be to review it by impact instead, rather than the height. So an example of this would be to review by the land use instead of the zoning district. So that's just an idea that we have, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jay that's going to continue the presentation.
Good morning, Jay Sweet, Community Development. As we started reviewing this, we thought, what is the best way to take and to amend the code and address the concerns that we have, that the residents would have, and how do we go forward? And in talking about that, a couple issues come up. One issue comes up is land use. And we should be looking at, in our opinion, just the land use, both existing and future, so we know what the existing compatibility and what the future compatibility will be, and we should be looking at the adjacent land use. One of the applications we have is right along the city boundary, and outside the city, the land use is residential, much more intense than the San Carlos parcel, and we really should be looking at that. And one of our thought processes tonight is, when you apply for a special exception, you notice everybody either 375 feet or 500 feet out, depending upon the application, and we really should be looking at land use and compatibility that same distance all the way out. And we think the code should be amended to reflect that that is part of the review criteria. The other thing is that there's a hierarchy of towers we're going to talk about, because our code talks about just two towers, monopole or stealth. Is actually a range of towers. And then, of course, we want to talk about height versus the actual real estate located on the tower. The tower hierarchy, you have from least impact to most impact. You start with stealth, which would be like the bell towers, something, the flagpole, something that's not readily identifiable as a cell facility. You have the camouflaged, which really is more like that monopine. The attempt to try to take a cell tower and blend it into the environment where that you wouldn't normally immediately recognize it. Then you have the monopole, which is the industry standard at the current time. And then we go back to the self-supported lattice-style towers, which generally you start talking about towers 300-400 feet. And then you have, of course, the guide towers, which if it's a television station, you see those that are 1,000 feet sometimes. And so when you look at those hierarchies from least impact to most impact, we can apply them to land use. And if we look at it this way, for residential, you'd only want stealth and camouflaged. Where in commercial, stealth, camouflage, and even monopole may be appropriate because commercial generally abuts the residential. You look at the adjacent uses, the impact of the type of tower, where the tower is located on the site, and you could decide which one of those type of towers would best fit the environment. In industrial, obviously industrial is industrial, and you would have the monopoles, the self-supporting, and even the guide appropriate. A large industrial park, it wouldn't necessarily be anything wrong with having a large guide tower in the middle of a industrial land use. Height versus tower real estate. What we're going to, I think, show here is that much of the height that's being asked for isn't because they need the height to broadcast a signal for coverage. They need the height to get as many cell towers and many co-locates as they can at one location. All of us have different carriers. You may have AT&T or Verizon or Metro Cellular or Sprint. And depending on who your carrier is, you may be saying, I don't have a problem. Or you may be saying, yeah, I got a big problem. Some of you may have even changed carriers because it didn't work at your house or business and you got one that did. And this is because of the lack of co-locations. So as we look at maps, you will see that things look like they're covered, but they may or may not be. So the question is, do you want taller towers where there'll be more co-locations, fewer towers, or do we go with shorter, less noticeable, better camouflage towers, but we'll need more of them because the amount of actual real estate on the tower, as you see there, will be lessened. So there would be a fewer amount of antenna arrays that can go on it. The other thing that happens is, as you can see on this particular picture, the antennas come out from the monopole. The more you make them close, the fewer you can get on it. So when you do the flagpole, you may only have 4 or 5 canisters inside the pole. Where here you may have as many as 40 that could be wrapped around a taller pole that's exposed. So that's a consideration that we need to evaluate. Getting back to the macro versus the micro. You build the tower tall enough, you get a 10-mile range. Short tower, 2-mile range. What we keep hearing from the industry, though, as they come in, is that they want 1 mile is what they're trying to do. They're trying to get a 1 mile between towers. And so we prepared a map that shows the existing towers. Now, there's one tower on there at the very top, that is the BSU tower. So far, BSU has not allowed any cell companies to co-locate on their flagpole tower. So we didn't show it on here, even though it exists. If they changed their mind, then radius would be added to it. But we didn't want to misrepresent that there's a tower that's being used when it's not being used for cell facilities. 1 mile radius, you can see that there is using what the industry is saying, there's a gap. And the San Carlos Tower we've been talking about falls right about there. It's where it's been proposed. Now, we know, though, from our research that 2 miles is really the actual industry standard, okay? So the question now becomes, when we apply 2 mile radius to those facilities, do we need more? And that boils down to the actual amount of real estate on the tower. Can each of the carriers find space? And we don't have a way right now to identify the carriers, the information we have as to what each carrier map is. They can provide that to us, and that may be something we want to look at. But as you can see, the 2 mile at the micro range that our research provides, the city's basically covered. This would be if 5 miles, obviously everything is covered, and then it's just an overlay that shows you the 3, the 2, and the 5 mile dynamics. We know there's lacks of coverage because we can go out there and I can take my phone in certain areas of town. I changed carriers because Sprint was not giving me what I wanted, so I changed carriers to go, well, now that I get pretty good coverage everywhere I go. But, you know, that being the case, we all know that there are gaps in the coverage area. So the real opportunities is to change the code to address a couple key elements. How do we want more attractive, camouflaged, and stealth towers? There'll be a lot more of them, but they won't be so noticeable. Or do we want a few really big, there's the cell tower, wherever you stand in the city, and it covers. Now that may be a little extreme, but the idea is that the amount of co-locations. The other thing is, we need to define them better so that we can separate between the stealth, the camouflage, the monopole, and then our development regulations. We could encourage locations of cell facilities on tall buildings. And we have some tall buildings being built in the city. We have the opportunity for some, even as we redevelop Old Bonita, there'll be some buildings that may be 3, 4, we allow up to 50 feet there. Even there, they could put a facility on top that you wouldn't notice. And do we want to amend our regulations that would really strongly encourage people to use that as a method versus building more towers? And then there is a question. Technology is changing very, very fast. There are people out there who say that cell towers could go away within 20 years, okay? Because the technology is changing so fast, the delivery system's changing so fast, that they may be able to do it by satellite. They may do it other ways. So one of the questions is, should we, and we believe we should, have some tower removal regulations that when they aren't functional anymore, that they just can't sit there and be an eyesore, that they should have to be removed. And then we're looking for direction. Where do you want to go with this? And I think that the biggest one is the tall few, short more, is really the question that we need direction on. And with that, we can come up with regulations and bring them back to you and propose them. But it's a fundamental question as to which method, which direction do you want to go with the tower height and visibility. We can get them camouflaged. There's ones that look like streetlights. You saw a photo of them. If you're going to go, and the other thing is with the regulations, if we're going to go with more of the camouflaged monopine, maybe a shorter, maybe a 75-foot monopine instead of 150-foot, with 50-foot trees may not be bad. But then we also need to make sure we have regulations for enforcement. And the reason I bring that up is that during 2005, on the other coast, we had this great big one, looked like a nice Norfolk pine. Hurricanes came through and it looked like a Norfolk pine with half the branches blown off. And that happens because that's the way they're designed. It's still sitting there in 2014 with half the branches because they didn't have a mechanism to force them to replace them and repair it. So that's something that we need to address.
Okay, good. So you ready for council to, okay, good. Janet?
Alrighty, so definitely I agree that there should be something about maintenance too, obviously, on that. But the first thing that comes to my mind when I'm thinking about these cell towers is imagine a sunset on Bonita Beach with the view. If you've got a nice view and all of a sudden there's a cell tower going up, so we're going to have some very unhappy residents. So definitely I think that we need to have some regulations in place, and we need to address where these future towers need to sit and how that does play into the residential. But what we're talking about a lot is the height, but what I'm also concerned about is the distance, because if you start looking into this, there's a certain amount of the population that believes that cell towers are unhealthy, that, you know, their radiation, you know, of course we're exposed to a certain amount of radiation every day in our daily lives, but do I want to have a cell tower that's shooting off these EMFs and EMRs in my backyard? Because if you Google a cell tower and the health and safety of one, you're going to come up with all these horror stories of how cancer incidences are higher with people who live within a certain distance. So I don't know what a safe distance is. I don't know. I don't want to, you know, but I think we should kind of look into if somebody else is doing this, if somebody else has done their homework on it in another city, as to, is there a safe boundary line in distance to separate a tower from where people live? I'd really like to see that be factored into what we're going to work on. But I think it's time, and I approve and want to work with this. When you ask about, do I want to see more of them? When you think about what I just said, I don't know if more is the answer, but I definitely want to go with the camouflaged and stealth no matter what. I think that they should kind of try to blend into our scenery here. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else got anything before you start dividing this up? Yeah, Bill, I'll go to you and I'll come back to you, Peter.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Bill.
Thank you. My question is, this is chapter 4. How many chapters do we have in the, what's the number? Is it 1 through 10?
In the Land Development Code?
Yeah.
We had 9.
9.
Okay. My question is, it's been 10 years. What is the normal time that community development, I guess, is responsible for it, that these things should be reviewed, the chapters themselves? Because if this is 10 years, how about the other 8?
And we did just do 1 and 2, and 3 is on the docket right now. Some of the chapters are very small. Some are just 4 pages. I do want to point out the telecommunications language was probably state-of-the-art at the time it was prepared, and it's just now fallen behind the curve because it has not had any amendments. But chapter 4 is your biggest chapter. That's your zoning chapter. And so some of them, you're right, we go through reviews and we do fix things during it.
And sometimes we try and...
Sometimes we bring things forward and you guys don't want to talk about it.
We tell you to go away.
Well, not only that, but I mean, council has directed us that we kind of chunk this up into small bites that's easier to kind of digest, for everyone to digest. And so we've been kind of going through that too. So I think in answer to the council member's question, we really don't have a specific set date by which things have to be reviewed. I think we take a look at what's happening in the city, where we see the city going in the future, and challenges that we see developing, especially like this in the technology field.
Okay, good.
But to answer your question, we did 1, 2, and 5 last year, 5 being historic preservation and 1 and 2. I mean, they were probably 15 minutes at the docket because there wasn't truly significant changes, but there were some important changes.
Yeah.
Well, I think my question, another question I have is, since we've gotten pressure from the tower companies, is that the reason why we're reviewing it now, or was that going to happen anyway?
I think there's a proliferation of applications, and you want to make sure that you're your staff is reviewing it consistent with the ordinance, but you also want to make sure your ordinance is consistent with technology, with state-of-the-art, and what your wishes are.
My specific question is, we have 3 companies that want to put new towers up. If they had not come forward, would we be looking at would Chapter 4 still be this, we wouldn't be looking at trying to change it? Did they instigate that we better look at Chapter 4?
It played a part in it, but it is not the entire reasoning behind it. We are at an interesting time in this particular section of the Land Development Code because you have 2 major forces that have kind of evolved over time. One is the design of the towers, which our code does not currently reflect, which would be one of the reasons why we would need to come back with this anyway, regardless of whether we had applications or not. The other is the invention of smartphones, which requires additional capacity on those towers. You're no longer just dealing with phone calls that are going through there and they're being processed, but you're also dealing with massive amounts of data. So you're seeing a push for new towers to accommodate the data and phone calls that are now being required. So it was partially because there were requests, but it's also partially because the technology has changed, and unless we make an amendment, we are not reflecting the current techniques that the industry is trying to construct too.
So in other words, it's reactive. It's something brought this up to where it was like, oh my gosh, we're getting a couple of these. Is this going to be a problem? You look at it, yes, it is going to be a problem. So that's when you try to become more proactive. So it's kind of a combination.
Yes, sir. And it's no different than if you were to look at the building code and new techniques were developed and were trying to be implemented, and the building code needed to be amended so that it could accommodate these new techniques. The same situation exists here with the towers. The towers are no longer constructed the way they were when this ordinance was first created, and therefore needs...
Yeah, and even though we would love to be completely proactive with these things and be able to predict what's going to happen in the future and what problems are going to pop up, it's kind of hard to do, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I don't disagree with that, Ben.
All right, good. Thanks, Bill.
My point is that maybe there should be a system in place that we review, or a community development would review each chapter every 2 years or something like that, because it seems to me that we get ourselves in situations and we have to crisis management. And the history is history, it's over. But we want to improve upon the communications so that we all are not faced with situations that are less than nice.
Sure. Good point.
Thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, we agree with that.
Yeah.
In fact, we've started this process over 2 years ago to do this methodical review of these codes that have not been changed in some number of years. And yes, applicants are going to come along in the midst of that, but the bottom line is that we've been working really hard, and we recognize that community development planners can't do it all by themselves, and it's why we bring folks in like Alexis to give us some additional capacity in terms of bringing these things forward to council in a timely fashion as well.
But at the same time, I'd like to point out that as everyone knows, it's impossible to predict evolution. And anytime you go to predict evolution, you're just as likely to be wrong as you are to be right. Exactly. Anyway, Peter, go ahead.
I'd like to largely echo Janet's thoughts, and I think master the obvious here once again. My first reaction would be no additional locations. However, with the existing locations that we have and the new technology on poles for stealth and camouflage, even in an industrial zone, quite frankly, there's no need to sacrifice just because it's an industrial zone. If we can go, and certainly you look at cost as factors, but are these new poles, do they produce more than the old poles? I mean, I think that's obviously something to look at, and there's no doubt about it, as one unhappy Sprint, I'm outside of that 1 mile buffer looking at that for sure, but obviously a lot of other people are too. So when we look at the number of locations, what can we do? Is it strictly based on height, or do these new poles carry more, pack a bigger punch, so to speak, with a bigger radius? So those type of things, less intrusive as possible, and obviously blending in as much as possible.
All right, well, let's break this down into some bite-sized pieces. So let's start with I think what is the easier one, which is would you agree with staff in that, you know, instead of going by zoning, we should go by the land use, the broader comprehensive plan? Because that makes more sense, because, you know, when you look at comprehensive plan, you're talking about an entire area that is affected, instead of you've got this one singular zoning. Oh, we can fit it right in there. Would you agree they should go by that instead of
Yes.
that, right? Is that okay?
You need a motion for that?
No, we'll kind of
just-
put them all
yeah,
together
okay.
here. We'll paste it together. And then when it comes to the what they look like, don't you think that they should include, you know, every trick in the book?
Yes.
In other words, whatever it
Stuff,
whatever it
whatever.
takes, show some flexibility, be able to. I don't know about the 300-foot tall pine trees. That you're not fooling anybody with that. Not even the mechanical chipmunks. There are those, right? No. Yeah. Yeah. And yes, maintenance codes. And would you agree that there needs to be I think you're right. I think this is predicting a little evolution here, evolution, that this is someday they may be just kind of standing around and be looking for something else to use it for. There should be something in there to where they have to remove them. Once they don't exist as a cell tower anymore, you take them down.
And maintenance of
Yeah,
whatever.
and maintenance until such
facade
time.
They have to put on it.
Absolutely. So that's one of them, right? So now I think the more difficult question is the mini versus few, the mini shorter ones versus the fewer taller ones. I don't know about you guys, but I really don't know how to answer that question. I think it depends on where you are. I think that if you're in a predominantly large agricultural area or industrial area, you know, let's say towards the east there, well, it makes sense to be fewer towers, taller. But if you get into a downtown district, I think it's the opposite. If you've got places where you can co-locate or you can put them on top of taller buildings or something, it kind of makes sense to have them shorter and have them on top of buildings and have more of them then. I think is it kind of a combination? Wouldn't that be the best way to do it? I know that kind of leaves it a little nebulous, but having some flexibility there, is that a bad thing? I mean, what do you think?
No, I don't think so.
See, because I don't think even within our community, I don't think we can make one generalization
No.
about it. I think that, you know, and sometimes,
Size does not fit all.
make a real tall one here, and that's going to cover that whole area. But along here, we don't want any tall ones, so we're going to allow you to put a bunch of short ones along there. Would that be okay? Can you work something out like that? Council, is that all right?
Good
Good to me.
Go ahead, Steve.
Well, I think it fits your first point of
Yeah.
making sure that it fits with the area, but there's no question that economic development depends on this new technology and driving newer technology, and so a lot of things you said make a lot of sense. What I'd like to ask the EDC to do is to take a look at this differently than what the people in community development have done. There are places on that map that were not covered, specifically out in District 6 on the east end. And we know that the fire district has a piece of property out there, and that might be the place to relocate or co-locate some sort of tower out in that area to help that district, rather than infringing on the residential areas that are already out there. I think it also makes sense for EDC to look at organizations, for example, the Cafe of Life, that has a facility in a public-private park area now that's not well covered. And if you can build a facade around a tower that looks like part of the park or an entrance to the park, then you've got some coverage that is not intrusive on the people around there. So while the EDC has made their presentation, I'd still like to ask the staff to have a conversation with them about marketing those kinds of areas as opposed to going into areas that we haven't thought about or aren't interested.
No, I think that's a good idea to work with the EDC and get their input on that type of thing. One thing that I would like to talk about is the whole idea of camouflage. And do you need some better day? I think you're going to have to be careful with that, because pretty soon people are be coming up. I'm going to make a 312 beaver, I don't know, whatever, chip, something. Or, you know what, we're going to put a giant symbol of a whatever. That's going to be like a giant sculpture, and everybody's going to really hate it. So I think we're going to have to be careful when we craft these regulations that, I don't know how you're going to do that, but we need to be careful. I almost think that the best camouflage you can have is a single monopole painted blue.
Right.
Because it's in the sky. Okay, I don't know, but or maybe put a mechanical cloud going around. I don't know, whatever.
Who's going to be?
But I don't think you're fooling anybody. But in some cases, if you were going to put like, oh look, it's a quaint antique water tower. Oh, good. So I think you're going to have to be careful when those things come forward. And I guess you do that through the system of having it come before council. And that's the way you do it. And you require them to come before council so that we can tell you how much we hate it or like it. So any other comment, or do you need anything else from us? Is that pretty much cover it? Yeah, we're good. Good. Council, you got any more? Go forth and make more rules. Good. And I think that there was one statistic that was missing from there. I can't help it. 90% of people have smartphones, but and 90%, what is it? 90% of phones are smartphones now or something like that. But, only 20% of people are smart. Okay, so anyway, wanted to add that on there. But that's my opinion, of course, editorial comment. All right, good. Anything else? Good. And we're going to roll along here. We're going to go to the consent agenda. Council, we have A through D. Do you have anything on there you would like to pull at this time?
C.
C, you would like to pull C. Anything else? Is there a motion to approve the remainder?
Move the balance.
Bill makes a motion to approve the
Second.
remainder, and there's a second by Janet. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Martin?
Aye.
Councilman Slechta?
Aye.
Mayor Nelson?
Aye.
Councilman Simmons?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Longcart?
Aye.
Councilman McIntosh?
Aye.
All right, Mike, what do you got on
well,
item C?
I just had a question. We're approving the 17,400 and not the optional 3,500, or are we doing the whole thing?
No, they had added the 3,500 to the quote in case the committee had considered doing confetti, and we did do the confetti last year. Unfortunately, the cleanup for the confetti is not worth the 3,500.
That was my concern, was the confetti and the streamers. So.
I'm sorry, Laura Taylor, Communications Manager.
Oh, thank
She
you very
didn't
much. All right, good. Okay, good.
Good.
All right, thank you. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have motion to approve. Is there a
Second.
second? We have motion and a second. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman Slechta?
Aye.
Mayor Nelson?
Aye.
Councilman Simmons?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Longcart?
Aye.
Councilman McIntosh?
Aye.
Councilwoman Martin?
Aye.
Okay, we are to public comment on any city item at this time. Anyone wishing to speak on any city matter, please come forward. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment, and we are to public hearing. Item 9A. Audrey, what do you have for us?
Well, this is actually from Community Development. This is a request to vacate a portion of an easement for a reservation for utilities maintenance located in San Carlos Estates. I'm going to let Jennifer DeFola-Hagan present the case and provide the additional information, and hopefully have an affidavit of publication.
Oh, yes. I will
that
get
would be nice.
to you. Yes. Again, hello, Jennifer DeFala-Hagan, Community Development. The request you have in front of you today is to vacate a portion of an easement reservation for utility maintenance in San Carlos Estates. There is a utility maintenance easement that runs between two lots. The applicant is here today if you have any questions for him. He's sitting in the back row. Kevin, can you wave? Kevin's here today. He's under contract to purchase these two lots. He intends to build a single-family home by combining both of the lots. But as you can tell with your backup, there is this utility easement that runs through both of the lots, which would prohibit him from doing so. So he has received all letters of no objection from Bonita Springs Utilities, the city, Comcast, CenturyLink, et cetera, and no one thus far has provided any objection to the vacation of these easements. Thus, in Kevin's hope that he can pursue lot combination with your approval of vacation of these easements.
Okay, good.
Move to
Council?
approve.
Move to approve? Is there-
Second.
Motion second. This is a public hearing, is it not? Okay, and thank you very much.
You're
Now I'm going to have, we're going to go ahead and open the public hearing this time. Anyone wishing to speak to this matter, please come forward. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, and we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Roll call.
Mayor Nelson?
Aye.
Councilman Simmons?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Longcart?
Aye.
Councilman McIntosh? Councilwoman Martin?
Aye.
Councilman Slackton?
Aye.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. All right, we are on item 10, first reading and public hearing of the following ordinances. Now you're up, Audrey.
Thank you. This is an ordinance of the City of Bonita Springs, Lee County, Florida, extending the territorial limits of the City of Bonita Springs, Florida by the annexation of unincorporated tracts of land within the Sanctuary Lakes and Pelican Landing Unit 22 subdivisions that are contiguous to and being in the same county as the City of Bonita Springs, Lee County, Florida, located in Sections 8 and 9, Township 47 South, Range 25 East, assignment to City Council District 1, and providing for an effective date. I reviewed the affidavit of publication, and it is legally sufficient. The ordinance is scheduled for a second reading and final public hearing on June 4th, 2014, beginning at 5:30 p.m. This is the biggest of the residential property owners. This is 56 individual units that have been compiled by community development into a compact, contiguous, and not creating an enclave design, structure, annexation. Jay Sweet can provide you additional information if you have any questions as to the annexation.
If there are no questions, we will go to the public hearing portion of this, council. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter, we'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this, please come forward. Seeing none, council, what's your pleasure?
Move to approve.
Second.
Move to approve. There's a second. Any other discussion? This is to go to second reading. Roll call.
Councilman Simmons?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Longcart?
Aye.
Councilman McIntosh?
Aye.
Councilwoman Martin?
Aye.
Councilman Slackton?
Aye.
Mayor Nelson?
Aye. Okay, what else you got, Audrey?
We have another first reading. This is amendments to the Bonita Springs Land Development Code, Chapter 3, Development Standards, Chapter 4, Zoning. It states Chapter 6, but we aren't doing the Chapter 6, enhancing the design standards of large-scale retail establishments. An amendment to Bonita Springs Land Development Code, Chapter 3, Development Standards, amending Section 3-262, Lighting Standards, and Section 3-263, Bikeways and Pedestrian Ways, to have additional standards for large-scale retail establishments, creating Section 3-426, Landscaping Standards for Large-Scale Retail Establishments, creating Section 3-427, Community Space Standards for Large-Scale Retail Establishments, creating Section 3-440, Public Transit Facilities for Large-Scale Retail Establishments, creating Section 3-497, Building Design Standards for Large-Scale Retail Establishments, and an amendment to the Bonita Springs Land Development Code, Chapter 4, Zoning, amending Section 3-843, Use Regulations for Conventional Commercial Districts, amending Section 4-934, Use Regulations for Planned Development Districts, creating Section 4-1560 through Section 4-1563, supplementary regulations for large-scale retail establishments, setting forth provisions for purpose, applicability, definitions, procedure for approval, development regulations, building placement, and providing for conflicts of law, severability, codification, scrivener's errors, inclusion in code, and effective date. This is the first reading. The ordinance is scheduled for public hearing on June 4th, 2014 in these chambers, beginning at 5:30 p.m. I reviewed the affidavit of publication, and it is legally sufficient. You received yesterday or the day before yesterday, a copy of a memorandum putting out bullet points of the changes. It was given to you in the errata sheet. So the ordinance that we have on the document here is not the most current. The more current one is the one that was provided in the errata sheet. Two other points that I want to bring up before staff gives their presentation, and that is we will be also making additional changes. You can see they gave me very large letters here to make it consistent with the noise ordinance as far as any service delivery. That was a recommendation by Chris Campbell. And was contacted, in the green sheet, it discusses direction, and I'll ask further after staff gives their presentation, but I want to bring that issue up as to how to deal with development agreements. I mentioned Bonita Exchange. Bonita Exchange is not the only affected development agreement, also the one we have with the racetrack property. Could be impacted by it. I'll be talking with the owners of the property this afternoon, but I can talk more about that during direction. At this time, Carl, do you wish?
Alexis coming up.
Morning. For the record, Alexis Crespo, representing staff. I've prepared a PowerPoint presentation. lots of visuals, but also to walk you through the content of the revised ordinance. However, I know from speaking with some of you that you're up to speed, might want to jump straight to your comments, questions, rather than go through a lengthy presentation. So I'd ask council what their pleasure is, if they'd like to just address the changes made, or if you'd like to walk through the whole document.
Council, would you just like her to address the changes to the document, or do you want her to go through the whole thing?
Just address the changes.
Yeah, why don't you just talk about the changes? I think we're okay.
Excellent. So I'll be referring to Ms. Vance's memorandum on page 1 of the revised ordinance sent out yesterday. We deleted Chapter 6 from this ordinance relating to signage because your staff is bringing forward a separate signage ordinance dealing with it in a more holistic manner as opposed to just signage for big box. In terms of the bike racks, the original number proposed for big box retail would result in a very high number of bike rack requirements for these types of uses. So we did additional research and were able to come up with a different ratio of required bike spaces based on the square footage of the proposed building. Currently, your code does require a bike rack for a commercial use. It doesn't require a certain number, and we felt because of patrons and specifically employees that may be using bicycles to get to and from the site that a ratio was needed to ensure adequate bike parking was provided for. So we've tied it to one bike space, not rack, but one bicycle space per 5,000 square feet of floor area of the use, which if you have a 150,000 square foot standalone big box, that would result in 30 bicycle parking spaces. So that was how we addressed that item. Is there any questions on that?
Council? No? Good. Go ahead.
We also added some text to try to clarify the comment by Councilwoman Martin regarding external connections. And I think we can, when we bring this back to you in second reading, take it another step further and make it a little bit more clear that we're looking to create sidewalk connections to be provided to the adjacent public sidewalk system on arterial roadways, collector roadways. So we'll work on that and bring you back some more specific language to make sure that those sidewalk connections are made.
Good.
Okay. The next item was in the landscaping section. There was a Scrivener's error where we suggested that the terminal islands, the plantable area should be 20 feet in length at the side of the parking space. Your parking space length is 18 feet, so it would result in islands being 2 foot longer than the parking space. Safety issues would result. We've changed that to 18 feet to make it the same length as your parking space, so clean that up. In terms of community space, this was an item of significant discussion with council and stakeholders as well. Through working with the LPA at our meeting last week, we discussed adding a cap, and what the revised ordinance proposes is 10% community space, no more than 1 acre per development though. So if you had a 20-acre site, you wouldn't need 2 acres of usable community space. Also proposing a revision to that to only require 2 forms of community space per development instead of 3. And in speaking with Ms. Montgomery prior to the hearing, she was also wanting to clarify that picnic benches in the front of the store where patrons and employees can have their break, have their sandwich, that was really intended to count towards this community space item. So maybe clarify the language a little bit further so it's clear that a lot of what is being done already will count as this community space requirement.
All right.
And again, this is a part of the overall 35% open space that has to occur. So this counts towards that and is not an additional acreage needed in the site to accommodate this requirement.
All right. Any questions? Mike?
Yeah, I still have an issue with the community space. I don't see how it's not considered a taking when you're requiring somebody that owns the property to make it a public use area.
If I can answer, there are times under, the U.S. Supreme Court has given us guidance in how to make a determination because we require things of developers all the time that developers aren't necessarily happy. Sidewalks are a great example. Stormwater are things that we feel are necessary for the public that they may feel, well, I don't want to provide it. And so they've come up with a test, and it's called the rough proportionality test, and there has to be nexus to the property. So what that means in English is that it has to be something that is approximate to the property, and it has to have some relationship with the property. So if it's something that patrons can use that are members of the public, that was certainly, as well as being necessary for the public benefit or not to create a public detriment. Those are areas where that would be permissible. But you need to make sure you meet that nexus and that rough proportionality test, and that's where we had it open-ended. It certainly did not meet it. So that's where we capped the size, so somebody's community space would not be the same as a whole downtown area because they were developing a larger site.
Maybe it's the term community space that's a little
Yeah.
confusing
Who
here.
controls this space? I mean, is it
It's
public?
still private
It's
property.
still private property. It's still
So
the-
they can say who can be on there at what
Absolutely.
times?
Yes, yes. It would be similar to if you had a sidewalk on your property and you had somebody doing something inappropriate in that sidewalk area. You could tell them to leave your area or that portion of the sidewalk if their behavior was something that you felt it created a trespass. So yes, absolutely. Perhaps the term community space needs to be changed to something a little more, although we did put it in the title block.
It is a little, I don't know what you would call it.
It
but
sounds
I-
like Monopoly, like the game of
Well,
Monopoly.
no, it does sound like, okay, this is open to the public, people can come hang out here.
Like a park.
Yeah, like a park, but that's not the intent at all.
No, it's
an
really-
accommodation for their patrons, right?
Yes, I'll try to figure out another term that can be used.
Certainly, yeah, there's,
Like if protesters decided to camp out there, they could ask them to leave
It
because it is
clearly,
private property.
yes, in the occupied cases, this would be private property. There is case law where the shopping malls had areas open to the public, but it was not deemed a public space. I need to review that area of law. I have not read those
I
cases.
think it'd be a good idea if we could, is to use a different term there, because that would avoid some confusion in the future if people all of a sudden say, well, this is a community space, I've got a right to be here. No, you
Right.
don't.
maybe use the term usable
Yeah, right, I don't know.
space.
Figure something out.
I'll
All
figure out, so I want to do some research on
right.
this.
Mike, you got anything else on that?
On this section, no.
Okay, thanks. Go ahead, carry on.
Just a couple visuals on it. I mean, this was, would meet the intent per the language currently proposed, bench with seating area. This is outside of Publix. And then this is at Burnwood. Waldrop Engineering is directly behind this Publix. And this table is always full of people. They really use it, so I think it would be a good
All right.
addition, but we just need to clarify and make sure it's not anything that appears to be, as you said, a
Of course, if a restaurant went to do this, you'd require a special exception, right? Just kidding.
Right.
Okay?
Um,
Just a little dig there.
Okay. Moving into the architecture, there was a comment regarding materials, specifically the requirement for a wood Bahama shutter. If achieving the old Florida style, we removed the term wood. When I was discussing further with Ms. Montgomery, there's several features where the material is locked in through the terminology where it may not be appropriate, as there's multiple materials that can achieve the same intent and could be more durable than what is being proposed. So we'll continue to look through that list and make sure we're not being overly restrictive in terms of the materials. The next item on this list is regarding the insertion of the use tables, and I think this will be helpful in really understanding the uses that will be subject to these regulations if they exceed the 40,000 square foot for a standalone, 100,000 square foot for a shopping center. This is not hotels or restaurants or auto dealerships. This is your true retail, department stores, variety stores, toy and hobby stores.
Not racetracks.
Not racetracks, exactly. So I think in having that list now in the ordinance, it clarifies this is truly retail establishments that are exceeding a specific threshold of square footage. Then also, we removed monument sign because, again, we're removing signage in general from this ordinance. Ms. Vance added some language into Chapter 4 regarding shopping carts to discourage their removal from premises, as that can obviously result in some impacts to surrounding roadways when carts are abandoned off-site. A significant change at the bottom of the memo was in relation to Councilman Gibson's comments regarding the tunnel effect and the concern that our orientation of the sites was not providing enough flexibility for developers. So what we did is inserted another option for development where a double-loaded parking aisle could be developed in front of out parcels for these developments. So that would allow some parking. It would mitigate the sea of parking effect because, again, it would be just one double-loaded parking aisle, but at the same time accommodate the market demand for some parking visibility from the street. So we felt that that could work, and I believe Ms. Montgomery was pleased with that as well.
Well, I still have an issue with that. In doing that, then you'd have two fronts to a store. You have people parking on one side and then the majority of the parking on the other side. But the main thing is still being built out on the street. It's it's something that works more in a pedestrian scale environment, like a downtown area. It's going to contribute. It's going to make it look like an urban area instead of driving down 41. Because nicely landscaped parking lots look a lot better than having a building 25 foot off the road.
I have some visuals that can maybe help walk through that. Certainly the downtown Fort Myers Public's 100% very urban. This is not the greatest quality of picture. This is the West Marine at US 41 in College. These out parcels are directly on the property line. The parking is in the rear of the building.
The out parcels I don't have a problem with. It's the large building being on the road.
But having an out parcel fulfills the regulation.
Yes, you can select that option, and we realize that many developers will likely not select the option of putting their big box on the frontage directly. So this would likely be the resulting option selected. We're not forcing them to do it. We're giving them a menu of options.
Well, I felt the whole reason for this being done is because we want it to look nice. And I don't think having a big box store right on the road is going to look nice. I think it said 70% of had to be frontage. So if you're talking about a 500-foot frontage along the road, that's 350-foot long building is going to be right there. And these out parcels are fine. It's smaller. You're going to see around them. But having the option of that building being there, I don't believe is a right option.
Okay.
Do you have a visual example of what it looks like when the structure, the big box itself, is that close to the roadway?
Locally, the downtown Fort Myers Publix is the best example of that.
Do you have a picture of that?
I did in my previous presentation. I took it out of this one,
And
unfortunately.
you only had the one view of it. I'd like to see it from all angles.
Okay.
They have receiving docks, trash compactors, things that have to be located outside still. Are we going to see the receiving dock on the side that you're parking on?
No, because we have regulations in here that would provide screening of any service areas from adjacent rights of way.
And then again, when I looked online, all the times that I could find something, a larger building like that along the road, it was all in urban areas, downtown areas. I couldn't find anything like along 41 in our type of community.
Now, one of the options is to have, like you said, you had the one that said it was kind of wrapped around.
This would be the liner building concept.
The liner
This
building.
is obviously in Bonita. I don't have the exact dimensions, but I did measure several ones on 41 that did meet the 70% coverage. And this is a lengthy building. The two concepts of architecture have to be married with this orientation concept. If you don't have really high architectural standards, I completely agree that the view shed from the street would not be great of a 300-foot long building with minimal architectural detail. When you have Mr. Vincent's architectural standards and those heightened requirements for recesses and variations in massing like you see on the Bonefish example, you're achieving a really high aesthetic with the building that makes it create a nice view shed. If you don't have that architectural aesthetic, putting that building on the street is 100% the wrong way to go.
And on that building, if you go a little further to the left, it doesn't look that great because on the side of the building, you have the receiving area for Bonefish and the dumpsters and everything else right there on the side of the building. And the rest of that building, it's all smaller businesses. They can receive through their front door without issue.
Right.
But when we're talking about a large big box store, Publix's, Sam's, any of those.
Well, I think that maybe we can, we'll invite everybody else to the party here. I think I would agree with Mike that having the idea of having a gigantic big box right up against the road is probably not the best idea in the world, in my opinion. However, I do like the idea of having the liner buildings like that, to where it does divide it and give it some distance, because it does reduce the scale and lets it go gradually in the back. And they do handle this well in some of these cases, to where it's two-sided. It has a really good frontage area. It's not a receiving area right there in the one area, but then on the other side, you're able to access it. And then there's room in the back to where they can share parking. I like that, and I like the out parcel idea. So maybe there's some ways that we can do that to kind of satisfy what Mike's concerns are and what the similar concerns are, which is, we don't want that gigantic building right up in the front. We need to encourage them to not have the sea of parking, but to go ahead and have some other buildings and some landscaping or some other parking there. But I think there's a way to do that.
And I agree, the liner building and the out parcels, I'm fine with. It's just that the big box store being on the road, I don't see as being appealing.
Mike, let's find out. Council, what's your view on that? Anybody feel strongly one way or the other? Janet, go ahead.
I guess that I'm, you're doing one of these and I'm trying to visually picture any big boxes, and you're showing this, but this is actually individuals
Right.
put together to kind of give that look. But I can't visualize in my head any big boxes that actually went ahead and put themselves where they had the building right up front. Most of them are set back with the parking lot in front and the auxiliary uses, or their, the fast food, the out parcels. Usually they take advantage of those being up in the front. So,
yeah, and we're used to that, right?
yeah, I mean, that's kind of the mindset. So I was just sitting here trying to Google up some pictures and see if I could find some myself.
I guess the first
those.
IKEA that comes to town and it's that. Well, everybody will freak out. Yeah, Peter, go ahead.
I'd like to either remove the box option completely or table this. I just don't think we're ready to even move this to a second reading at the moment.
What do you mean remove the box option?
Well, didn't we just talk that conceivably they could? Correct.
We currently have a couple of architects that are looking at this ordinance right now. If it would please the council, what we can do is have them pay particular attention to this section to provide their feedback as to what is a good idea, what is a bad idea, and also provide you some examples of what we can find of those big boxes that are located closer to the right-of-way. At that time, you can decide whether you think this is an appropriate design element or if this needs to be taken out of the ordinance. Either way, it would be fine with us, but we would at least like to provide you the specific information on this so you could make an informed decision.
Well, I think that's kind of the guts of the whole thing here, is where do you position it? I mean, on there, is that important or whatever? So I think more information, we need more visuals on that in order to proceed on that. And
That would be fine. I think that I'd be happy to bring that back, some of those opinions from the designers, just provide their feedback and also show you some visuals so you can see if you like this type of.
Well, and show us how it's working out other places. I'm sure we're not by ourselves in this. So, yes.
I'd like to make a motion to table this.
Audrey, what's the appropriate way to do this, to go ahead and
I would request, only because we have advertised, it is costly when you advertise. We could table and then re-advertise at a later date. Did you send out the second advertisement?
No, because you changed the title.
Can't we move it to a second?
Well, I did that.
Right, can't we
If
just
we
move
haven't-
it on?
Move-
okay.
move
if we could.
If she hasn't
Well,
mailed out the second advertisement, then I'm not
let's handle it this way. We've got a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Okay. Now, I guess that the thing is, would it be better off, would it be just as easy to go ahead and send it to second reading and then deal with it then? And that way we could go ahead, have it in the system, and you could always perpetually send it back and send it back and send it back.
That's what I would think.
If that would be easier.
And at that time, you could decide you want to take this design option out, so there wouldn't be anything that would prevent you from taking it out of that second reading.
Or should we just take it out now?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think before we take it out, we probably ought to see examples of it. I think that's the thing, is can we see information on it when they bring it back? Can we see pictures? We want to see pictures, because, well, like they said, if we see, why and where and why that works out, we may change our minds. I don't know. So,
And you have plenty of time to take it out.
yeah, absolutely.
So, if you want to, sure.
Yes.
If we table this, does that not make us subject to somebody coming in during that period of time and
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't think tabling will accomplish anything. You essentially have the ability to perpetually send this to second reading. If we were going to do that, that wouldn't be a good idea, but we could do that. So that the system allows for that to be continually going on. And another reason, we're holding things up right now, so we don't want to table something. We want to continue to work on it, I think, more than anything.
And it would be a financial issue.
So at this time, there's a motion and a second to table it. If the motion stands, we want to, and the other option, if we do not choose that option, the option will be to go ahead and send it to second reading and then go ahead and take care of that, and then bring back, either way, you want to bring back some more information, some pictures, some real good visuals on what that means so far as scale and or why, or what the options are to satisfy that. So I'm going to go ahead and call for a vote right now on the particular motion, unless it's withdrawn.
No, you know what? I'll withdraw it because I want to protect the city against somebody coming in. But moving forward, I'm of the mindset to remove the box option completely and really kind of go through this thing with a fine-tooth comb and, quite frankly, gut it.
Well,
Okay.
when you say remove the box option, what do you mean? Do you mean remove the box
The
being
one
up
along the street.
close to the road option?
Correct.
Okay, good.
Correct.
Just wanted to be sure. Okay. So with that in mind, could we go ahead and send this to second reading and then have Alexis bring back examples about, yes?
I also need for direction on development agreements, per the green sheet.
We're going to have, yeah, believe me, we will do that before we get a motion going there. Hi. Yes. But anyway, yes, Alexis.
If I am understanding beyond this figure one option, which again can very easily be removed from the ordinance, but if there's other significant issues you have with other language, maybe we should go through the whole presentation and get that feedback so I can have a much more refined document for you at the second reading. Or we can speak offline.
Sure, we can speak
Okay.
offline. It's that box that's the concern.
Okay, that's an urban option that we can absolutely address.
So you have other issues that we need to go forward with before we?
No, I just heard a concern about other potentially other items in the ordinance.
Don't worry, we'll
that
get this
I'm-
more confusing before we're done.
Okay, great, thank you.
Good. Okay, besides the positioning of the building, do you have other things that you would like to bring before us on this particular issue before I go to public comment?
That was the last of the changes we made in response to what we heard at permission to advertise and through the LPA.
Okay, and Audrey, what do you have for us?
Yes, and before you take a vote or anything, as I understand it, I'm going to work with Ms. Crespo to redefine the community space concept, do a little legal research as to privately owned, make it very clear that this is privately owned property under the control of the retailers that are involved with it, subject to their control, but make it very clean so that there won't be any doubt there. We'll also work on making sure that the materials are not limited to a certain product, so that we took out the wood, but there may be some other places where we need to do some refinement. Finally, if you look on the second page of the green sheet, it discusses that I want direction as to Bonita Exchange, and now not just Bonita Exchange, but also the racetrack. Normally, development agreements vest the property owners with whatever the laws were in effect at the time that you entered into the development agreement. We receive benefit from the development agreement. We receive certainty as to the size of the development. We receive certainty as to how to address transportation. And certainly with the development agreement with the racetrack, we receive certainty of revenue upon some time when the state of Florida decides to allow slot machines to go there. So with that being in effect, those two are the impacted developments that would potentially, we don't have a lot of development agreements, and development agreements are different than development orders, that would be affected by this ordinance. So I want to know whether to add language, and if I do add the language, we do have to have a public hearing just for that. We can do the public hearing at the same time as adoption, because the statute requires that if you're going to make a development agreement, have to comply with language in a newer ordinance than what was in effect at the time you did it. You need to pretty much state affirmatively in the document that you're doing so because you feel it is necessary for public welfare, through your police powers. And then I explain what police powers. So I can add language into this draft ordinance, but I want to make it clear it's council's direction to add that language. That would say any development that is subject to development agreement will have to be going through this ordinance. The applicability will apply to it. Since these regulations contained in LDC chapters 3, 4, and 6 related to large-scale retail establishments are essential to public health, safety, and welfare. And that's a finding of fact the council will have to make, and I will notify, if you do want that language in the draft, I'll notify Ms. Montgomery as well as Mr. Havenack. I can see how Ms. Montgomery feels about that language. I think she needs to have input. It's a serious issue, and I agree with Ms. Montgomery. It's a very serious issue when you make that application to existing property that has a development agreement.
That sounds like a horrible idea.
Well, that's what I need to know from you, if it's a horrible idea or if it's a good
Sorry,
idea.
I mean, we'll.
That's why I want your direction.
Okay,
and
I'm
by
sorry.
direction, I want all 7 of you.
Editorial comment, by the way, sorry.
It's
Sorry about
perfect.
that.
It doesn't hurt my feelings.
first flush,
It
didn't it?
doesn't hurt my feelings not to have it in here. I just want you to understand
Not my intention.
the seriousness of what you're asking and the consequences of making that decision.
Oh, the seriousness of what you're asking.
I want you to understand the consequences. I want you to make an informed
Well,
choice.
thank you. Thank
and
you.
at this point, I would suggest that Ms. Montgomery raise her position so you understand where she's coming from.
Mr. Mayor,
Well, wait,
before we
yes,
do
hold
that-
on. Hey, I get to run the meeting still, not Audrey.
Oh,
See? Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead, Carl.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Audrey and I need to take a look at the development agreement or the agreement we have with the Havanaks. I'm not even clear to what degree this type of ordinance would actually impact them in the future. Those negotiations with that particular agreement were more financial in nature, but we do need a chance to take a closer look at that one.
Well, we've approved a lot of other, we have supposedly vested some other places as well. And so I think we need to be a little careful on that. So anyway, okay. And, but so far as your presentation, you're pretty much done, right, for right now? Good? Okay. Public comment. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter? Oh, look at.
Thank you for that
Why, look.
opportunity. For the record, my name is Neil Montgomery, and you have covered a broad array of topics, so let me start with the last one first, development agreement. I represent both the potential buyer and the property owner for the Bonita Exchange property. There is a development agreement, and it specifically says in there that they are vested. It also specifically says it's a contract, and most of you have entered into contract, and it says you can't amend this contract without the mutual written consent of the parties, and a development agreement by statute requires 2 public hearings to amend it. So you can't go in some other document and adopt something that changes the terms of our contract. So that's my position on the development agreement. Now let me get to the concern I think that Councilman Simmons has raised. And I think there is only a limited number of places in the city where a big box can go. This is obviously one of them. And you have two scenarios. One is they keep the site exactly as it is, which is vested and developed pursuant to the zoning of the development agreement. The other option is that they need to change it. My expectation is that they need to change it, which means they would need to come in to ask you for 2 things. One is they'd have to amend the development agreement. 2, they'd have to amend the zoning. And if they did that, all these things that you're talking about, that you're worried about, I would imagine you would address through the zoning process. So the idea that there's a fire we have to put out because something bad's going to happen in the short term, to go to your point, I don't think so. So I don't think we need to rush to get it done by the 4th of June. I think we have time, should take time. Just like we have wooden awnings, we have iron, bars on our windows we have to have, and terracotta ornaments, and a lot of things where we define those things. And I'll give you the example I gave Alexis to kind of help you have a visual. There's things that Alexis can wear that like a size 2. She looks terrific. You put those same things on somebody that's a size 28, they don't look terrific always. And we've got some of those things in here. So, that's...
Well, I'm glad you're using that analogy, and
I know you can.
Not one of us.
I can. She's kind of used to me, so she didn't surprise her. Let me give you an example of exactly your concern. Corkscrew Road, under the Estero rules, all the buildings are supposed to be up against the road. This personal opinion, I don't particularly think they look great. Miramar Design Center came along. It would fit as a big box under this. They wanted that building, under the rules, flush up against the road. Personal opinion is that would have looked hideous. We got a deviation, we backed it off. We have parking in front of that building. You could define it as a sea of parking, but you can't see it. That's because they did a great job on landscaping. I think rather than putz with the orientation of how these sites typically lay out, you are better off doing what they did and have great landscaping along the roadway, because then you have the parking in front of the building and you only have to worry about one entrance, but you address the visual aspect. So I think there's a way to do what you want. And also the Publix that Alexis referenced, because it's flush with the sidewalk, now it is an urban environment, the loading areas face directly onto the parking lot, right in front of the building. There's no place else to put them. So, you force that kind of design. Let me go through some of the things. I agree with putting signs all in one place. One of my comments when I went through the ordinance was, if you stick sign provisions in the middle of the big box, the poor sign contractor is never going to look there. He's going to look in the sign section of your code. So putting all your sign regulations in one place makes a lot of sense. Perfect. Change the quantity of bike racks. I agree with that. What I'd also say is you should add in language. Right now it says you have one bike rack. It should be one or more. So long as the number's right, why should I have to have, before I would have, under the rules, if you hadn't changed it, I might have had to have 100 bike racks all in one big bike rack. I don't know, I think that's really attractive. Again, it gets back to what you're trying to achieve. You're trying to make it look good and provide certain functions. So I think that we still need some tweaking in regards to that. Changing the island length was great, otherwise you're going to have those, you're going to be constantly having people getting stuck trying to get out of those. Community space. I'm going to disagree with Audrey to some extent. If you go back to one of the grandfather cases on takings in Florida, it's the Granby Estuary. There's a big, long discussion, but what it says is this. If I'm preventing a public harm, I have a lot more leeway. If I'm providing a public benefit, not so much. And if you're making a private retailer provide community space, that's a public benefit, not preventing a public harm. Now, if you look at Alexis's examples, two of them I agree with, one I don't. I think if what you're really trying to do is provide patron space, which two of those examples were, I don't think anybody complains about patron space. But let's go back to where those large format retail is likely to be, which is out on the Bonita Exchange by the interstate. There have been problems already on that property over time with homeless people and littering on that property. And in fact, when the hotel was vacant, it was a huge problem. They made them go back, code enforcement here made them go back in and secure all the windows and the openings because there were people living in the building. I don't think I want to build a gazebo or park benches in places that invites that activity on that property. So you're going to make my client do it, and then you're going to cite him when the homeless people use the space. I don't know that I think that's a good situation to put a property owner in. Don't create spaces and places that are going to create problems that we then have to figure out how to fix. If it's the benches in front of the Publix example or the ones on the Burnwood property, those are fine. Those are patron spaces. Those will be used by patrons. Security can be provided, and it makes sense. But to have an acre with a gazebo that you constantly have to police is not a good idea. And I think the change that we made in regards to the out parcels was great because, again, you have that example. You may like those. Those aren't my favorite. The last time we had the discussion on this, as I drove around the city, you have lots of out parcels that have parking in the front. Again, they have a lot of landscaping. You can't see it. And it allows for better circulation and a lot of the other things. And if it happens to be an out parcel, it allows you to better locate your drive-through and better screen it if you have better traffic flow and you can have some of the parking in the front. There's some other out parcels close to this site that have the parking in the front, and I looked They look fine. They look just as good as these do. And those aren't necessarily my favorites anyway, but you've got some really nice landscaped out parcels. So I would suggest that you move in that direction. Some of the stuff is just wordsmithing, but I'll give you an example. If you look at section G1, it says special standards for large-scale retail establishments. Then paragraph 1 talks about the fact that we're going to design them to provide safe and convenient access for pedestrians and bicycles. And then you have A through D. Well, it doesn't ever say, for example, that A through D satisfy paragraph 1. So a simple change that makes it clear for everybody is safe and convenient access is determined by compliance with the following. So there's stuff like that you can do to make it clear so we have less trouble when we go to implement it later. I could go through all of them. I haven't gone through them with Alexis, but we did talk about the fact that we need some better flexibility in the materials. I think we get the type of design that you want, but again, some of those things are going to look good in a big building, some of them aren't, and you need some flexibility in order to accomplish some of those. One of the things that, for example, is you have landscaping all around the places where you put your carts. There are other locations where some of the big boxes have done that, and if you screen them too well, they don't get used because then people don't readily identify them as the place where their carts go. So if you're going to screen them, have vegetation at the lower level so you can tell what the heck they are, so you know that's where you're supposed to put your cart. For example, you have landscaping around all entrances. Well, perimeter building makes sense for your main entrances, but on the sides and the back you have employee entrances. If you put landscaping around those, and a lot of the big boxes are 24 hours internal stocking and stuff like that, then you create security issues for your employees coming in and out, and that's the problem. And particularly if later on we're going to be regulating the amount of security lighting we have. Now I'm going to have low-level lighting, and I'm going to have plants. That's an invitation for problems, particularly for female employees that I don't think we want to create. Another example is there's a section where we reference that we're going to do the landscaping and we're going to be consistent with Conservation Element Objective 9.3. Now, I looked at that, and what that talks about is that the city's going to develop a nutrient discharge limitation by 2008. Okay. I don't know how a private property owner complies with that. I think that's a good objective and goal to have. I don't think it should just apply if you're going to have nutrient loading criteria. It ought to be somewhere else and apply to everybody, which is what I think was intended. So that's a change I think we need to talk about doing. And one of the things too is we want to have, in the code, we're going to have bumpers around all the lights and bumpers around all the landscapings. Here's what happens very often with those. When you do that, they become, unfortunately, not everybody that uses these facilities will walk to where the trash receptacle is. So if I've got a bumper there, it's like, oh, that's a good place to hang my cart, or that's a good place to throw my trash, or my gum or my cigarettes or whatever, and then they become harder to maintain and they don't look good at all. So we need to think about how easy it is to maintain them so that not only does it look nice when it's built, but I think the last time Mr. Schwing said, you're going to have these buildings here for 20 or 30 years, and he's right. So let's design them so that they're easy to maintain, so they look good 10 years from now, not just the day we have the grand opening. And one of the things we talked about too is it has a perimeter buffer requirement. There are some locations, Bonita Exchange is one of them, where there's a big wetland in the back, and that wetland is on both the commercial parcel and on the residential behind it. So, and we dealt with this through a deviation when we went through the process, is that we weren't going to have to put the perimeter buffer through a wetland. In other words, you wouldn't nuke part of your wetland to put a buffer in. You would allow that wetland area to remain. I think that's something you want to do. It's just not covered by the code. You need to provide for that sort of situation. So I haven't gone through all of my comments, but they're all sort of under that line where I think we can make this better. We can accomplish what you want to accomplish, make it easier to maintain and function. That may take some time because I think we probably need to sit down and talk with a variety of people. There's some things that Alexis couldn't explain to me that is different staff people contribute different parts, and so I think, a dialogue is good. And I understand you don't want anything bad to happen in the interim, but I don't know that I think it will, because I don't think you have any sites that, without some changes, can accommodate it. And I know that one of the other parcels you had a concern about is it was originally Burnett 80, but it's the southeast quadrant of 75 and Bonita Beach Road. And there happens to be a deed restriction there that doesn't really allow for Walmarts and Targets and that sort of thing. So I think, and Publix isn't inclined to remove that deed restriction in the short term. So I think you're protected from that use going there in the immediate future. So I don't know that there are any sites where, without some changes, that would have to come here. You have a problem, so I think we have time to work on it, and if we can't get everybody together before the 4th, so I guess what I'd encourage you to do, rather than table it, is maybe give us a little more time than the 4th to sit down and try to work through these, so we can come back and have something that everybody can live with.
Okay,
That'd be my
good.
thought.
Good, thank you very much. Audrey?
Yes, as I understand it, if council wishes to address Ms. Montgomery's concerns, what I would suggest is that we hold the hearing on June 4th, but we continue it to a time and date certain on June 4th, perhaps in July will work, so that we have enough time to resolve the issues. The changes I have is changing community space to patron space and making it very clear there. Making it clear that the materials are used to describe, so like if using clay tiles, that doesn't preclude composite materials. Delivery trucks, keeping the noise ordinance, so it's consistent with the noise ordinance, modifying the bike racks. And the big one, I presume I am not adding language to make it, any document that has a development agreement must follow through. But if you do want that, I need to know.
Council, my opinion on this is that we just don't start a fist fight with people over that particular issue. I think Neil makes a really good point that it is contractual in matters. Did you want to go ahead and add what Audrey had given us the option, or you just want to leave it be? So far as inflicting some of these on the existing ones we have development orders with, or with people we have development agreements with, you want to leave them alone?
Well, do we have a chance of getting a plain Jane building in the interim?
Yes, I've just been reminded that there is another inquiry on another piece of property right now. It is an existing building, so we do need the protection that we've got.
But we also have design standards in place. It's not as if we are starting from ground zero.
Yeah, and then something we kind of try to remind council when we started this is that we did work quite, what was it, 8 years ago, 5 years ago, 8 years ago, we did develop big box standards and design standards. We do have them. We're not without them. This is just a supplement to that. It was what it was, an enhancement.
Very similar to telecommunications.
Well, and what council has asked us to do, which is be top notch, and we're just trying to get the legislation in place to be there.
Right.
Right.
But I think that what we're going to is that if there are entitlements, so far as those things, we just don't want to be able to remove them at this point in a manner that stops them from doing whatever it is they would like to do.
Right.
Or so.
And remember that even if you do not add this language in on the Bonita Exchange property or the racetrack property, there is still language in there that, they would have to do design improvements. It's not as if you would have a plain Jane utilitarian box from the 1970s. They would have designs, it's just would be to the same level as this ordinance.
Right.
And the area I'm concerned with the racetrack, although racetrack would not be, is making sure that substantial improvement would not trigger some kind of extraordinary change. Although, again, their architecture's been since the 40s. I don't know if any of us love it, but
Well, I think that we can safely at this time say, no, we don't want to do that at this time. That doesn't mean that by the next July, we may go, you know what, the heck with that. We have more information now that we would like. You can decide to make that mistake anytime we want to, right?
Absolutely.
So, sorry. But council, would you like to go ahead and send this to second reading, date certain in July? so that it gives extra time to work with the property owners, affected people?
We'll
Yes.
still schedule for June 4th, but at June 4th, we'll schedule it for July. We'll just do a very quick hearing.
Okay, all right. So in other words,
Promise that
it'll
to
be,
Montgomery.
the second reading will be there, but we'll go ahead and forward that at that particular time. That way the advertising stays intact.
Counsel?
So what would happen was that it would be sent to a second reading.
Right.
And then we would go ahead and forward it at that time with that understanding. Okay?
Well, I mean,
Yes.
I'm for the protection, but, so what we're looking at here is to bridge the gap before we can get our enhanced standards implemented while working within the structure that we currently have. That's exactly what we're doing? I'd like to afford the protection, but I want to make it very clear about these enhanced standards. You know, if there's somebody that, Neil, I'm not sure if it's a client of yours or somebody, if they want to come in under our current standards, is that what I'm understanding?
My client has a vested development agreement that specifically says they're vested under the regs today. So if they don't change anything, you can do whatever you want and it wouldn't affect them. I believe that they need to change some things, which means they're going to have to come back before you. So with or without these changes, I suspect you're going to do a little arm twisting, and they would have to essentially do better than the existing code regardless. So, and the particular large box person that wants to go there has looked at all the other sites in the city, and really this is the only one that's suitable. So I don't know that there's a big mad dash for any other site other than this one. So I think you're protected, is what I'm saying.
I think that that's true, because most of these that have vesting, there's something else entirely different that's going to go in there. Well, substantially different that's going to go in there. So they're going to have to come in and they're going to have to get things
I
changed.
know the Lowe's
and
site
so
is for
they're going to be
sale, but
subject to
there's
the
some
new
things about
regulations.
that, you're right, that would have to change. And so that's not going to come in anytime soon without changes either. So I think between now and July, you're not at risk.
Well, and I would remind council and myself and everybody else that the reason that we're going through this is because we want to make everything, I think, we want it to make it look better. Right. It's really an aesthetic thing, and there are some practical issues in there too that I think we could all agree on that make parking lots function better and that type of thing. So with that in mind, I think that it's just kind of a subjective thing in a lot of ways of what we think looks better and what's going to function better without doing harm. So with that goal in mind, I think we can send this to a second reading. Staff can go ahead and work on getting us some examples. And if you feel very strongly that those things that you've suggested are the appropriate thing and will make it look better, please prove your case that, look, this happens in these communities and the people are glad to have that happen. So, because, we don't want to make a mistake. And I mean, if our opinions so far as what architecturally looks good and looks bad, if we're wrong about it, we're wrong about it. And just show us. I mean, that's what we need you to do. So with that in mind, council, are you okay with going ahead and forwarding a second reading and then going ahead and at that time in June, we'll go ahead and extend that out so that we can keep this moving, because we do want to accomplish our goal of making it look better, but go ahead and inviting all the players to the table. Is that okay? All right? Is there a motion to do so?
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Do you need anything else from us? Can we mess this up anymore for you?
Diane had made a comment to me. Did we get all the public comment?
Oh, I don't know. Well, let's find out. Anyone else wishing to speak to this matter at this time, please come forward. Nope.
She's a happy
That's it.
camper.
Good. Thank you very much. And we have a motion and a second. No other discussion. Roll call.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Lonker.
Aye.
Councilman McIntosh.
Aye.
Councilwoman Martin.
Aye.
Councilman Slackton.
Aye.
Mayor Nelson.
Aye.
Councilman Simmons.
Aye.
Listen, thank you very much. It's a good discussion, Mike. Well done. Everyone, well done. I think that we'll end up with something good here, but I appreciate you being careful with it, and we've got good staff, so thank you very much for working on this. All right, what else we got here? Audrey?
Have another first reading. This is an ordinance of the City of Bonita Springs amending the zoning ordinance by amending Table 4-843, use regulations for conventional commercial districts to require that any properties having certain uses within 100 feet from US 41 Tamiami Trail be permitted only by plan development or special exception, providing for conflict, severability, codification, inclusion in code, scrivener's errors, and effective date. This is a first reading. The second reading will be held on June 4th, 2014, beginning at 5:30 p.m. I have reviewed the affidavit of publication, and it is legally sufficient. John Dolmer can explain this to you. The type of uses are on the second page of the green sheet, if you want to go through exactly what the footnote entails.
Okay, John, just in short, can you, for the benefit of the public, go ahead and just explain what this does, just in short?
What this does is bring the US 41 corridor more in line with the standards we currently have in place for Bonita Beach Road.
Right.
What they do is they place more intense uses into a plan development or special exception approval process as opposed to a situation where they are by right.
Right, so those things that are more intensive and that are more problematic for their effects on residential communities adjoining, they come under the special exception process, so they come before city council, correct?
Yes, sir. Both of the special exception and the plan development would be presented as council for their approval.
So if there are additional landscaping, additional walling, or anything like that we would want to inflict upon them, that's what we would want to do in order to have them be
That's
able to.
correct. Yes,
Okay. Okay. Council, any questions before I go to public comment? Any member of the public wishing to speak at this time, please come forward on this particular issue. Seeing none, council, what would you like to do?
Move to approve.
Move to approve, and this is going to, when's the date certain on this?
For June 4th, 2014, beginning at 5:30 p.m.
Okay, this moves to second reading, June 4th. Any other discussion?
I'll second the motion Steve
Oh,
made.
thank you. We have motion and second. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman Longcart?
Aye.
Councilman McIntosh?
Aye.
Councilwoman Martin?
Aye.
Councilman Slackton?
Aye.
Mayor Nelson?
Aye.
Councilman Simmons?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Okay, item D.
And this is one last first reading. This is an ordinance creating operational requirements for outdoor flea markets, supplemental to the special event permit, providing for conflicts of law, severability, inclusion in code, scrivener's errors, and an effective date. This is a first reading. No public comment is at this time because this is not a land development code issue. It'll be scheduled for June 4th, 2014, beginning at 5:30 p.m. If you have questions about this, City Manager or Laura Taylor can provide you with assistance.
Okay, council, you have any questions about this before we go to public comment?
No comment.
Oh, there's no comment? This isn't a land
No,
development
it's
code?
not a land. No, it's supplemental to the special event permit.
Yeah. Okay. All right, council, any questions?
Move to take it forward.
Move to push it forward, and is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any other discussion? Any questions? Roll call.
Councilman McIntosh?
Aye.
Councilwoman Martin?
Aye.
Councilman Slackton?
Aye.
Mayor Nelson?
Aye.
Councilman Simmons?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Longcart?
Aye.
Okay, Audrey, we are to second reading and public hearings on the following ordinances.
Thank you. This is an ordinance of the City of Bonita Springs, Lee County, Florida, extending the territorial limits of the City of Bonita Springs, Florida by the annexation of unincorporated tracts of land owned by H. Dennis and Lori N. Hill on Tuscany Way, lying contiguous to and being in the same county as the City of Bonita Springs, Lee County, Florida, located in Section 8, Township 47 South, Range 25 East, assignment to City Council District 1, and providing for an effective date. This is the second reading. The petition agreement served as the petition before you. You approved that previously in March. And if you have any questions, either Community Development or myself will be happy to help you.
Okay, any questions? No?
Move to
Let's go.
approve.
I'm going to go to public hearing.
Sorry.
Anyone wishing to speak to this issue, please come forward. Seeing none, council?
Move to approve.
Motion approved. Is there a second?
Second.
We have motion and a second. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Martin?
Aye.
Councilman Slackton?
Aye.
Mayor Nelson?
Aye.
Councilman Simmons?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Longcart?
Aye.
Councilman McIntosh?
Aye.
Okay, item B.
This is an ordinance of the City of Bonita Springs, Lee County, Florida, extending the territorial limits of the City of Bonita Springs, Florida by the annexation of unincorporated tracts of land owned by James A. Hollers and Reiner B. and Lisa Newman on Messina Court, lying contiguous to and being in the same county as the city of Bonita Springs, Lee County, Florida, location in sections 8 and 17, Township 47 South, Range 25 East, assignment to City Council District 1, and providing for an effective date. This is a second reading. Staff is here and can answer any questions if you have as to this as to these two particular parcels.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone wishing to speak to this before I go to public comment? We'll open public comment. Anyone wishing to speak to this matter, please come forward.
A long wait, ladies and gentlemen, but it's worth it. But anticipation of your affirmative vote, I'd like to say that my wife and I are happy to be the newest residents and voters of Bonita Springs. The Newmans also asked me to express their thanks to you, and especially to you, Audrey, who brought this to our attention, the possibility of it happening. Having said that, and I have to say this journey started a long time ago. This is the second time I stood at this podium. First time, Ben, was about 6-7 years ago when the overflight started. Yeah. And they were, we'd come back, my wife and I had come back from a long time, being away a long time, and I thought the World War III had started when our house was being dive bombed by these airliners, But anyway, so I spoke about that. But before me, a lady spoke about the sea turtles, and she really put a lot of effort into talking about how much the city of Bonita Springs cared about the welfare of the sea turtles, So I figured, gee, if they care that much about turtles, they have to care an awful lot about their citizens. I'd like to be a part of that city. So it took a little while to get here, but it worked finally. But in any event, I understand also, Steve, we've spoken, Audrey, this is not the last round of this battle. And so we're determined to do everything we can to make sure that this action today stands and will not be overturned by any action taken by anyone else to try to grab our property. And so now I can, my wife and I have, for now all these many years, slept in Bonita Springs, but we've eaten dinner in Estero, and happily I'm going to be able to now eat dinner in Bonita Springs. So thank you all for your support. And by the way, the things you're talking about today really caught my attention. If I now, as a voter of Bonita Springs, if I may make a comment, and the one was about this telephone. 2 years ago, I attended the finals of the Junior Achievement Competition for the Best Business Project by 6 high schools from this local area. And I have to say, I was really impressed by these kids. Somebody really taught them, don't jingle your change in your pocket, don't say like, and they really did a great job. However, 4 of the 6 projects were about cell phones, iPhones. These kids are enamored with these things. So if you want to have complete freedom to put towers wherever you want to, hold a general election addressing only this issue, reduce the voting age to 12 years old, and you'll pass by a landslide. I mean, they're just they're fascinated with the damn things, And so that was a kick. The other thing I would say, Councilwoman, is as an old statistician and a former geneticist in my earlier life, the issue of cancer and radiation from these towers, there's no statistical evidence that happens. What happens is that you have normal death rates by cancer, and let's say it's 20 per 1,000 people, whatever it may be. And 1 year, there might be 10 people die, and the next year might be 30 people die. So you'd say, gee, 10, the cancer rates cut in half that year, and then there'll be a big headline in the Naples Daily News saying cancer rates reduced in half. Nah, they won't write that. But let it go to 30, and it's still on the average. You got 20, 10, 30. And then they'll write a big article saying cancer rate doubles from last year or something. It's a horrible thing. But statistically, there is no evidence of any case, even in this case in England, where they said that people were dying like flies from cancer some years ago. The statistical analysis of it showed that there is no danger from those towers. And if it were, then we've got a lot worse rays floating around us every day of our lives and every minute of our lives. We'd be in deep, deep doo-doo for many other reasons than those towers. But I think if you let the kids vote on the towers and say, would you want to put it in my bedroom? That'd be their answer to you. So, in any event, great to be a part of the city. Thank you all for your help. Ben, thank you for your help. Audrey, look forward to being a part of Bonita Springs. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, you see what you did? You just brought somebody who uses logic and reasoning. That crazy talk.
I'm sorry.
We usually don't do things like that, but okay, fine. All right. Anyone else like to speak to this matter? Please come forward. Seeing none, council, what's your pleasure?
Move to approve.
Move to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Roll call.
Councilman Slakta.
Aye.
Mayor Nelson.
Aye.
Councilman Simmons.
Aye.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Longcroft.
Aye.
Councilman McIntosh.
Aye.
Councilwoman Martin.
Aye.
Okay, what else you got for us?
Thank you. It's an ordinance of the City of Bonita Springs, Lee County, Florida, extending the territorial limits of the City of Bonita Springs, Florida by the annexation of unincorporated tracts of land owned by Walden Center LP and WCI Communities LLC, lying contiguous to and being in the same county as the City of Bonita Springs, Lee County, Florida, located in Section 9, Township 47 South, Range 25 East, 8.91 more or less acres, assignment to City Council District 1, and providing for an effective date. This is the second reading. I've reviewed the affidavit of publication, and it is legally sufficient. Again, you had a petition that was previously approved by council through an annexation agreement. If you have any questions, Community Development and I can help explain the parcels.
Thank you very much. Council, if there are no questions, we'll go to public comment. Anyone wishing to speak to this particular issue, please come forward. Seeing none, public comments closed. Council, what's your pleasure?
Move to approve.
Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman McIntosh?
Aye.
Councilwoman Martin?
Aye.
Councilman Slackton?
Aye.
Mayor Nelson?
Aye.
Councilman Simmons?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Longcor?
Aye.
Okay, item D.
Thank you. This is the last of the public hearings for today. This is an ordinance of the City of Bonita Springs, Lee County, Florida, extending the territorial limits of the City of Bonita Springs, Florida by the annexation of unincorporated tracts of land owned by Pelican Landing Golf Resort Ventures LP, lying contiguous to and being in the same county as the City of Bonita Springs, Lee County, Florida, located in Sections 5, 6, 7, and 8, Township 47 South, Range 25 East, comprising of 55.16 more or less acres. Assignment to City Council District 1 and providing for an effective date. I've reviewed the affidavit of publication, and it is legally sufficient. Again, you had an annexation agreement, which served as the petition in this case, going forward. So hopefully the petition has been approved. Staff and I can help explain if you have any questions as to compactness, contiguity, or enclave issues.
Thank you very much. Council, any questions before we go to public comment? Anyone wishing to speak to this matter, please come forward. Seeing none, public comments closed. Council, again, your pleasure.
Move to approve.
Motion approved. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Martin?
Aye.
Councilman Slackton?
Aye.
Mayor Nelson?
Aye.
Councilman Simmons?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Longcor?
Aye.
Councilman McIntosh?
Aye.
Council, well done. Thank you very much for accommodating these citizens' requests.
Absolutely. Thank you from all those folks who want to be part of the city. Thank you.
Still have one more coming up, the Huron Glen
Right.
parcels.
It's not done. Thank you very much. Okay, city attorney's report.
Thank you. The next is an ordinance, and this has been requested. We currently have a provision that allows single-family residential in our mobile home districts, and we allow that by special exception. The special exceptions have gone relatively easy, but it takes time, and people don't like to spend the time. So this would allow mobile homes in certain neighborhoods right away, like so neighborhoods like Lightner Creek or Rosemary Park. If you wanted a single-family residential, even though it's zoned MH1, you wouldn't have to go for rezoning. You could go and get the property treated in one step. There's a second prong to the changes here, and that is in June, I think it was June of last year, or no, October last year, we discussed the interchange area, and we have property that's zoned mobile home, but we don't allow mobile homes under the comprehensive plan. So that was where City Council denied a person from placing a mobile home in a mobile home zoning. This just reconciles the zoning ordinance to our comprehensive plan issue. There's still things you need to work on, or community development needs to work on in the interchange area, but this starts that process. If City Council approves it to go forward, it would be scheduled for June 4th for the first reading and June 18th for the second hearing, with the local planning agency reviewing on June 12th.
Okay, and do you feel as though that this is going to clear up that issue of transparency to where when somebody actually has the, well, you know, I'm going to be able to put, yeah, do you think it's going to help that problem? Or is there something else we need to do?
I think this goes a long way towards providing that clarity. The final step will be addressing that zoning specifically in the interchange area.
Right.
That will definitely clear it up. But in the meantime, this goes a long way towards providing that.
Is this a step towards
Yes, sir.
being able to redo the zoning to where it's,
It is a positive step in that direction.
okay, all right, thank you. Okay, council, would you like to advertise and
Yes.
send us to advertise? All right, this permission to advertise, there's motion, is there a second?
Second.
There's motion and a second to advertise this and to send it to first reading. Roll call, please.
Councilman Slakta.
Aye.
Mayor Nelson.
Aye.
Councilman Simmons.
Aye.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Longcor.
Aye.
Councilman McIntosh.
Aye.
Councilwoman Martin.
Aye.
Okay, item B.
The next item is going to be presented by Justin Diner from my office.
Justin.
Morning, Mayor, council members. Before I begin, I'd like to just say a few words. At the end of next week, my fellowship with the City of Bonita Springs concludes, and so I wanted to thank you for your trust and confidence over the last 6 months. It's been really fun to begin my legal career here, and Audrey and Joe and Dolly in the City Attorney's Office have really treated me well as every department here. City Manager's Office, Public Works, Community Development, and Code Enforcement. So thank you so much, and I appreciate all your trust.
It's been a pleasure to have you here.
Next up on the agenda, we have a resolution of the City of Bonita Springs, Florida, authorizing reimbursement funds for certain adjacent buffering along Shangri-La Road in accordance with prior right-of-way acceptance and providing for an effective date. The city previously accepted a road right-of-way dedication in the platted Hawthorne subdivision through Resolution 13028 on April 17th, 2013. On the north side of the Hawthorne subdivision, there is a wall that borders the subdivision, and the city is planning an extension along that wall. The wall that's currently there costs an average of $550 per foot, and the city's walls that we put in are around $50 per foot. So what we were going to do is reimburse the Hawthorne subdivision for a wall extension there at the normal cost that it would cost us to put a wall in. That comes to a total of $11,000, and we're not going to do that reimbursement unless they sign a written release releasing the city from any obligations further dealing with the wall, and any as well as providing us with a receipt of the costs. And so we have Matt Feeney here from Public Works also to answer any questions regarding this.
Okay. Council, you have any questions? What's your pleasure?
Move to approve.
Motion to approve, is there a second?
And discussion.
Yeah, we have a second and discussion.
Right. And the costs, I know the cost for these reimbursements,
Oh, the cost would be $11,000.
that's it, and that's it.
That's it.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Good
One more
question.
comment?
Yes, sir.
I'm really pleased that the extension's going through. It's important for the traffic flow in this city, but the fourth time in front of council I've made this comment. It's a straight piece of road with no stops, and I'm concerned that it's going to be a speedway through there. I know I keep being told it's going to be okay. There are 2 intersections at least, and I know the engineers keep telling me it's not going to be a problem. I think it's a problem, and I don't want it to be a fatality or a serious injury before we really come to a conclusion on how to handle it.
All right, Matt.
Just to address Councilman McIntosh's concern, we're all aware that it's a straight shot, and the engineers don't see a justification for some traffic control, but we are doing some sidewalk extensions that will require stop signs at Windley Key Terrace, which is about the best we can do to slow traffic
That's okay.
down in that area.
Yeah, and I can testify to that. We went through this discussion a long time ago for Dean Street.
Mm-hmm.
Dean Street used to be a straight shot through there, and through, it's the intersection of Ragsdale and Matheson right there. Those stop signs have worked great.
Good.
I mean, they really have, and there was a lot of concern there. Really, we're going to put that there, and they have worked excellent. So, I think you're going to find that putting the stop sign there is it's going to really help. So
I'm glad to know, because initially I was told by the engineers, which made no logic to me, that you put a stop sign in, people wouldn't stop. That didn't make any sense to me. So thank you, Matt, for pursuing that. I appreciate it.
they'll kind of stop, I guess. Thank you, Matt, for your patience. Thanks. And where are we at with this? We have a motion and a second, right?
Mm-hmm.
Roll call.
Mayor Nelson.
Aye.
Councilman Simmons.
Aye.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Longcor.
Aye.
Councilman McIntosh.
Aye.
Councilwoman Martin.
Aye.
Councilman Slack.
Aye.
And thank you, brother, for everything you've done.
Yeah, Justin.
And hey, don't be a stranger. Come
Yeah.
back and see us.
Yeah.
You know, Mr. Mayor, sadly, after this internship, he still wants to be a municipal lawyer.
That is sad. That is sad.
Audrey, you did not do your job. I'm sorry.
What's up with that?
I try to teach them.
Yeah, okay. I bet it won't be here, though. Right? Yeah, he's like, yeah. All right, good. Yeah, Audrey, do you have anything else?
No, that concludes my portion of the agenda.
Thank you very much. Well done. City Manager's Report. We are up to you, Carl.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a review of the monthly financial report we've submitted to you. Do you have any questions?
Any questions? Nope.
Okay, that
Good.
concludes my report. Thank
Wow.
you.
Wow, what a guy. Okay, now we're mayor and council member items and reports. And Councilman McIntosh, before you start,
Yes,
I would
sir.
like to make a comment about some of the public comments. I have to say, I want to actually thank you for considering these things and bringing it forward. I think you're a person that the only reason that you bring stuff forward is because you want it considered for the betterment of the community. I don't think that you have really a political bone in your body when it comes to other things like that. I think that considering your background and what you do for corporations all over the United States and all over the world, I think this just comes underneath your wheelhouse, and I think that that's where it comes from. And so, I want to stand up for you and say that
Thank you.
I appreciate your earnestness and that you only bring this forward because you think it's something that the city council might want to consider. So thank you very much for bringing it forward.
Thank you. That's-
Even though I might not agree with it, that's
it's
fine.
Not the first or last time we haven't agreed.
Yeah, so I have at it.
Well, sunshine laws are important, but they do keep us from being able to discuss things among ourselves. So this is the time to discuss it. No matter how things are spun, my objective was to make sure that our citizens were confident in the decisions we made. And it's a complicated issue, but I'll make this very simple. If the code of conduct is sufficient, and if what I suggested was unnecessary, when I make a motion to ask city council to come back with more detailed protocol, the only thing that has to happen if everything's okay is not to get a second. At that point, the motion dies, and we get on with life and on with business. So I will make the motion that our staff come back with a more detailed protocol on the issue of drug and alcohol testing for city council. That's my motion.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second? Okay, the motion dies for lack of a second.
Thank you for listening.
And I appreciate it, and I appreciate you bringing the issue up. I think it's an interesting issue. It is fraught with peril in every direction, though. So thank you very much. Any other comments?
I'd like to comment.
Yes.
Steve, I understand the reason why you would want to do something like this. Having lived long enough to see the drug abuse and the complications of alcoholism real up front from a previous background, and knowing the job that the fellows back there and the gals take care of in the city and what they're faced with when they're dealing with people on drugs or alcohol excess. And I don't have a problem with having myself tested, but we also have other people that are in public office that have gotten themselves in all kinds of trouble in the last few months especially. And it's not just unique to the state of Florida, it's all over the country. So I understand where you're coming from, and unfortunately we have children today. There was an article, on TV last night about the can't think of the drug, Oxycontin. Thank you. The use of kids getting their hands on pills at very young age. It's a problem that's been going on for as long as I've been alive, and there doesn't never seem to be. But we cannot keep allowing people to abuse themselves and create problems for the police officers and everybody else that's involved in public safety. So I appreciate why you did that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's see. Let's go ahead. Yes, Steve.
I just want to mention that 40 years between the military and Delta Airlines, I have been random tested twice a year. I don't have any objections about being tested at any time. However, the concern that I had with this proposal is that just 2 neighbors in my neighborhood said, "Hey, what's going on with council? Who's been drinking? Who's been taking drugs?" And I said, that's not the case. What we want to do is we wanted to be held at a higher standard. And I think that was the intent of Dr. Steve's proposal. But I think Jesse made a very, very good point at the beginning. I think it should be voluntary. If anybody wants to be drug tested, fine, but I just don't think it's something we need to do before a council meeting.
Okay. Well, trust me, we are all being held to a higher standard already, and trust me, that is true. And your mental acuity is on display here every meeting, so be sharp. Don't fall out of your chair, and I think you're going to be all right, unless one of these guys arrests you for something, and then you're in trouble. All right, thank you very much. And Steve, do you have anything else to bring before council?
Just congratulations to all the 2014 graduating seniors from high school and our universities locally. This is not my role, but I've been to all but one of the Water Task Force meetings. They're making good progress. I thought the presentations this week were especially good, and thank you for those citizens and their involvement. Thank you.
Oh, and thank you for all that you do when it comes to education, and I'm looking forward to the breakfast. When is the date of the breakfast and the awards?
The 30th. It's been nominated as Business Partner of the Year by the Lee County School System.
That's
So,
a big deal.
yeah,
Big
thank
deal.
you.
Everybody, give him a hand. Great. You're a great role model for these kids. Thank you so much, Steve. Okay, and let's see. We have underneath that, we have approved resolution appointing 2 members of the City of Bonita Springs Tree Advisory Committee. And there's no name there for that, but I'm betting that's Janet.
Me. If you would allow me, Council, indulge me, I would like to make a recommendation for Mr. Caldwell and Mr. Grover to fill those vacancies, please.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to fill those positions with those particular good citizens. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Longcart.
Aye.
Councilman McIntosh.
Aye.
Councilwoman Martin.
Aye.
Councilman Slakta.
Aye.
Mayor Nelson.
Aye.
Councilman Simmons.
Aye.
Okay, and let's see. Let's go ahead and Janet, do you have anything
Can I
else?
finish? Yeah, that would be great. Last week, we did the ribbon cutting of Cullum's Bonita Trail, and I want to thank everybody that came out. That was so well turned out. It was such a beautiful morning, and just want to remind everyone that it's there and enjoy it before it gets too hot. Go out there now. The weather's been gorgeous, and it's a beautiful time to enjoy that trail, and it's an awesome thing that the city's done, and I want to thank everyone, again, who was involved in that, because, right from Cullum down to staff to residents to everybody who pulled together for that. And we're not done. The work is still is ahead, and we're hoping to have a great partnership with our friends at the Lee County 2020 so that we can get some right-of-way there to continue the path eastward so we can meet up with the crew lands. And that would make it even more awesome trail. And I just want to remind everyone that July 4th is around the corner. So the festivities will begin at 4 p.m. in Riverside Park, but the day always begins with our annual parade at 9 o'clock. And the Bonita Springs Fire and Rescue is in charge of the parade. So if you're interested in marching in the parade or having a float, please contact them. It's always a good day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Stephen, do you have anything for us?
Again, Justin, best of luck to you. Thank you for my association with you has been fantastic, and I just want to thank you so much. Jeff's not here from the Lee County Sheriff's Office. He left. Okay. Wish Jeff, our lieutenant, he's moving on to bigger and better things, and just want him to know that all of us appreciate everything that he's done for the council and for our city and our community. And Monday, Memorial Day, May 26th at 9 a.m. at the Riverside Park. We'll be celebrating Memorial Day. Hope to see you there.
Okay, thank you very much. And by the way, welcome back. You're on the mend there? Right?
I've got to be a bionic knee now. So.
Nice. Bionic knee. All right, well, thank you very much. Pete, what do you have for us?
Earlier, Councilman McIntosh had mentioned the sunshine law, so where we don't get to discuss these things in private, I'd like to have a discussion in public. I'd asked Carl recently to put together a couple of memos, and he's done a great job, but there's some information missing, and rather than bore you with, I guess, 20 or so pages, my specific question is, and I'll read from the memo, at its January 15th, 2014 meeting, the Bonita Springs City Council voted 5-2 to ask that if the PD&E study was going to include the option of a flyover, the study not be conducted. Representatives of the MPO and FDOT were present at the council meeting. The vote was transmitted by the city manager on January 23rd, 2014 via letter to the MPO and FDOT, see attachment number 3. Then the next, there's a gap of what happened at the February meeting, the March meeting, and then fast forward to April 17th. Councilman Peter Simmons sent an opposition letter to Don Scott, Executive Director of the MPO, attachment number 4. It's right here. The issue was discussed at the April 18th meeting of the Lee MPO meeting, and no action was taken. So in one of Carl's communications with me, I had asked what was the communication at the MPO meeting in the January, February, March, and April meetings, and he said that there is no record of that. So I guess the first thing I'd like to request is what was discussed at the MPO, and then I guess the second point is if we voted 5-2 against this issue in January, why has it moved forward to this point?
I can help you with that. By the way, on the MPO website, there are recordings of each and every meeting on there. So all you got to do is go on there and you go to whatever meeting that you want to go to, and you click on there and you can listen to the entire meeting, the meeting in its entirety. It's not transcribed. The minutes are very brief, and so there's really, if there's no vote on anything, there's nothing that's put on the minutes. But if you'd like to listen to the meeting, the entire transcript is on there. It's very good quality. So all you have to do is click on there, and there's no sense even forwarding it. If the website's a good website, you go on there, you look for the particular day of the meeting, whole thing's on there. Okay. But I will tell you from my standpoint, and Mike, you were at the last meeting, so stop me, if I'm saying something that's not true. At the last 2 meetings, this was brought. Your letter was read at the previous meeting to last meeting. Your letter was read to the MPO. There was a discussion as to the council's wish. Everyone there, the FDOT people are aware of council's wishes. The MPO, the entire MPO is aware of the vote that was taken. And there is a ton of respect, and there is even a ton of agreement that, yes, we understand that the city of Bonita Springs, they hate the idea of flyovers, they don't like flyovers, all of that being true. However, there is a ton of respect for the protocol and the system that the MPO uses and the FDOT uses to make a decision of any decision when it comes to a state road. The PD&E process, the planning process that they use, planning, development, and environmental process, is the system that they use. And there is a handbook that says, okay, when you make any kind of changes or make any kind of plans for improvements for the road, you will use the PD&E process, and the PD&E process looks like this. And part of that process is a respect for not predetermining the outcome. And so myself, a lot of the people who have been on the MPO there for quite some time understand that. So while there is a respect for the request of the City Council for the MPO to please respect our request not to build a flyover and that we hate flyovers, that's recognized and that's going to be held and that's going to be incorporated as part of the process. That was the decision that was made. Okay, we heard you, we understand that. However, it is there is a regional aspect for the road. The road is of regional significance. The intersection is of regional significance. We do want to do a study. We do think the MPO thinks that the study should be done and that it will be incorporated, and there is lots of opportunity for that opinion and for the City Council and for the public to say, we hate what you've come up with there, and that would be the appropriate time. So in short, right now is not the appropriate time to judge what may go there or what may not go there. Within the confines of the PD&E process, once the information is there, once the data is in hand, that's the time to say we hate it and make it go away. So in short, I think that's the conclusion that the MPO in general has come to. Now, if you're wondering, did I or did Mike or did Steve, did we kick and scream and do whatever we could? What we did, I think, is as individuals, Mike asked some good questions about at the end there at the last meeting, so far as, look, I mean, I think that your question was more along the lines of, look, why do you do a study if at the end of it we're going to shoot it down anyway? And I think that a lot of the MPO staff said, well, it's because or not staff, but MPO members said, well, the reason you do the study is so that you have the data, so that when you make the decision, you have data that supports what your conclusion is. And I think, in short, that's what the answer was. And myself, I expressed that, and you can check on there, you can see exactly what I said, which was, yes, as a councilman or as a representative of the city council, yes, I can tell you that that's what city council did. And I can tell you that, yes, I'm very supportive of the fact that I can tell you, people hate the idea of a flyover. But as someone who sits on the MPO, I also have a responsibility to support process and the MPO's process. And if the MPO is not going to be supportive of studies and a process that is one that's logical, rational, and as the gentleman says, supportive of data, then you know what? You want to abandon that process, abandon it. But you just can't abandon it for one. You've got to abandon it altogether. That's my opinion, and I express that as my opinion. And I have to tell you, as an individual, I will, at the end of this, and as your representative, at the end of this process, when City Council sees the data and they say, you know what, we see the data and we picked item A, if I am still in this seat or involved in it or sitting on MPO, that will be the agenda that I will put forward. I will personally do everything I can to forward the City Council's agenda, which will be to forward that particular improvement or the lack thereof. But I cannot, in good conscience, support not studying something, I can't do it. I can't believe anyone would ask me to do something that I thought, I know it's your opinion, but in good conscience, I can't be supportive of not supporting the scientific process. And that was my opinion. The MPO in general was supportive of that opinion. And Mike, did I misrepresent anything there?
No, it did come up. The state secretary of the DOT basically asked MPO whether they wanted to kill it. And it was pretty much consensus. It didn't go to a vote, but it was consensus that they did not want to kill it.
The study itself?
The study itself. And afterwards, talking with people, I believe it was Cape Coral, MPO member, that they did cancel a flyover study. They regretted doing that because, they wish they would have had the other outcomes to be able to further, because that intersection still sits exactly the way it was, and, they said it's their worst intersection in the city. The MPO representative from Sanibel also said that they had an issue come up that citizen support wanted to kill that study, and it barely made it through. But when the study concluded, they did have other opportunities that they hadn't looked at before, and the thing that they were against did not go through. But they did choose one of the other opportunities.
Yeah, and I think that that's the important part of that, is that the study itself reveals options that no one has thought of. Lots of options that you'll hate even more than a flyover that we haven't precluded yet, but because we haven't thought of those. But they will also come up with options that you'll be like, yes, that's the one we can live with. That one will help us. And I think that that's probably.
And I also want to say I did not drink the Kool-Aid when I was there, so I am still 100% against the flyover, and I will do everything in my power to prevent a flyover.
Yeah.
And Mr. Mayor, just to
Yes.
Peter's comment on the minutes that are not written that you didn't see, the MPO meeting following the 5-2 decision here, I personally said to the MPO and to the record that the City Council did not approve it. They don't want, and the citizens don't want, a flyover. So, yeah, we have made that pretty clear. But I wasn't at the last meeting. If the survey is canceled, what happens to the business opportunities in that area? Does that not become a constricted?
Well, that was what the secretary had said, which I hadn't thought of, and which frightened me really for the business people in that area, is that he said, look, if you don't avail yourself of the PD&E process, what signal you send to the FDOT is that you desire that to be a constrained roadway. He says, and we will consider it a constrained roadway. The meaning of that is we don't do anything to it. You live with the way it is. That's it from now on. I think that's intolerable. That you talk about something that's bad for business. That's bad for business. We can squawk, we can complain, you can hope for this and that, but the no build option that may well come out of the PD&E process means that there are a whole slew. That doesn't mean they don't do anything. That means that they will avail themselves of every other option other than building something gigantic. That no build means extra turn lanes. No build means timing of lights, restriping. No build means all manner of other things that you can think of. But in order to get to there, the process has to be followed. And that's what I took from the experts there. And that's what they have desperately been trying to communicate. We get it. You don't want it. They don't want to build it. They're horribly expensive, and they are just really intrusive. So I don't know anybody there that wants that to happen, including myself, but they desperately want you to avail yourself of the process because it's a good one. It's a good process. And that's I got to tell you, that's as best as I can explain it.
No, and while I agree with some of your points, I respectfully disagree with others. And hey, that's just you and I were never accused of being twins anyway, right? But
not by my mom anyway.
One thing I do want to ask, and one question I do get asked often is if FDOT came down here and helped me here if I misheard that we don't want to go against your wishes and we're not going to do anything that this city council votes for or votes against. And that was in January. We took the vote in January. At what point did this study move forward against our vote?
Well, the study was approved well before. The study was approved by the MPO like in what, September? Or it was in 2012, wasn't it? Well, the study itself, it got forwarded. In other words, it got set up. Do you remember?
Yeah, I think, we can confirm it, but I think the timeline was that it was fast-tracked or forwarded in 2012, but I believe that the actual contract for the people doing the PD&E was late 2013, and the actual physical manifestation of the study, things like the starting of traffic counts, because the study itself was about, I think, a year and a half study, but I think that the actual manifestation where they started counts happened this traffic season, so it would have been after January.
I know this. I think I know this. I know this, that when the council took the vote that they took, the 5-2 supermajority vote, the contract was already let.
Yeah, I believe so.
The contract was already let. So the decision was made, the contract was let, and the contractor was beginning work at that time.
And our understanding in talking to the MPO is that they've actually been underway for about 3 months in terms of actually doing the study.
Actual work, yeah. And the first part, and the other thing that was the meeting before last, Carla went into great detail about the first phase of the PD&E study being the gathering of data. Mm-hmm. No conclusions, no perceptions, no nothing. Gathering data about future land use, gathering data about counting cars, making projections for the future. If and when they get done with that part, that's the part they bring back and go, okay, here's what we found out about what makes this intersection tick. What do we think the traffic's gonna look like in the future? That's the first part they bring back. There's no conclusion, there's no recommendations, there's no nothing. It's just strictly data. And then that's the first public comment period that they start having is, all right, public, here's what we found out. What do you think about that? And that's the first opportunity to hate everything about it. The real opportunity. Yes.
So for clarification, when FDOT came down here and said we're not going to do anything against the city council's wishes, the study had already been approved. And she was talking about subsequent, once the study is done, the study is not going to move in a direction that the city council does not want?
I think that what they were trying to signal wasn't that they weren't going to do the study if it was against their wishes, but ultimately, whatever would be constructed, I think they were trying to signal that their experience has been that when they get to that point, they don't typically do something that the local community is against. I think that's what she was trying to signal.
She was talking about the physical manifestation,
Right.
the actual physical manifestation of whatever got
Some
built.
construction,
Not going to
some-
build something, some edifice to their whatever. I think, I know for a fact that's what she meant.
Could we get clarification on that point?
Okay.
Sure, sure.
Well, I mean, we can go back to the minutes of that meeting. She did indicate publicly on January 15th that they were not going to build something that a community does not want. She said that, but sure, we can pull that up.
Thank you.
Yes, Steve.
Yeah, one of the difficulties my constituents are having is that, why are we moving forward with the study when the city council voted 5-2 not to proceed? And I'm having trouble indicating the reasons why. So please help me out with that, because they're just saying, well, then the council's useless. Why have a council if we vote 5-2 against moving forward?
Well, okay, I'll take another shot at it. Here's the reason why. The city councils for the last 10 years, I mean, and this is the way the MPO looks at things. City council doesn't look at us as, just like individuals and stuff. They say Bonita Springs. For the last 10 years, this has been a priority. This study has been a priority for the city of Bonita Springs. It's been fairly clear, but it's like a lot of things. When you work on something for 10 years, it just becomes part of the background. It was trying to get things done at that intersection right there, trying to look towards the future. It has been in the 35-year plan to do something at that intersection for the last 10 years that I know of, since I've been on there. We've tried to get it forwarded. It's been on the SIS plan as a 13, a 12, a 10, a 9, back down again, back and forth. And as we would go along, it would be like, okay, well, we missed it. Here's the things that we got money for. Here's the things that we couldn't get money for. So it's been in there. It's been in there. It's been quite apparent that the study was in there for whatever it was called. In 2012, I came back and said, hey, great news. I mean, I don't know which meeting it was. It was like, yay, look at me. I did something that you're eventually going to hate. That we finally got it forwarded, and we actually got headed up on there. And then shortly thereafter, the FDOT calls us up and says, you got your money. Got your money. We're gonna do the study. And we thought that was cause for celebration. Came back to council, we got the money. Everybody was like, yay. And so the answer to your question is that council developed buyer's remorse. I think that's really the answer to it, is that once the general public found out, wait a minute, and then they started to go out, they went through the environmental. I think what really was the capper was when they went through the environmental part of the PD&E study, which the environmental part of the PD&E study is, what's the most horrible thing in the world we could build there that has the most environmental impact, so we can study that part first. When they did that part, they of course said,
Identified a flyover.
a gigantic clover leaf that would decimate everything. Let's see what effect, let's pull the trigger on that and let's see what the data brings back environmentally on that. When that was studied, there was a presumption that they're going to build a flyover. That's not true. That's not true, but that is part of the process. And so that's why. And so once that got kicked in, that's part of the process, and it was under process. And what's the sense of having a city council if we can't derail a federally funded state project? It's not a city project, it's a state project that we asked them to do. That's why there's some reluctance on the MPO's part to disengage from it. That's what it is.
And if I could just add briefly, I mean, what the mayor said is exactly right, but if I could add just briefly that what you touched on at the end there, and maybe this will make it easier for some of our residents to kind of get their arms around, is that whatever happens at that intersection we eventually expect to have partners in trying to resolve it. It's not, those aren't city roads. So the county, to one extent or another, has to be involved. The state, to one extent or another, has to be involved. And because federal dollars are often part of those equations, the federal process has to be involved. So no matter what the city council may or may not feel is the right way to go, we have to a certain extent, respect that our partners have their own processes that they need to follow, if for no other reason than to make sure that the money streams are still viable. So, and I think this is a perfect example of that, of where the council has expressed its interest, but we do have partners. They have to follow what they consider are the correct protocols and procedures. And I think we're just trying to respect their process, how it melds with ours. So it doesn't mean that your vote was worthless, but it does mean that it has to be taken in context with our other partners in this particular case.
Yeah, and it wasn't, the part of the vote, again, the part of the vote that said, look, we want to send you a message that says, don't you dare build a flyover there. That was important. That was legitimate, and it's going to remain legitimate throughout the whole thing. The part of the part of it that didn't make sense and that was contrary to the whole process was, and if you can't predispose yourselves, if you can't make that decision now, then we don't want you to do the study. That was the part that was like, wait a minute, this is how things are done. Studies are how we make decisions when it comes to transportation. That's the part that doesn't make sense. I'm sorry, it doesn't. You don't, if you can't predetermine something, you don't say, well, then I don't want to look at it. That doesn't make sense, because if you get your wish, it's not going to end well. And I think that, I got to tell you, the best response you can make, and I believe this, like I believe everything factual and true that I know, is that the process is made to incorporate the things that you don't want to see happen. It's made for you to go ahead and work within that process to obtain the goal that the city council has, even if the goal is not to not have something built. This is the process. This is what you need to do it, because you need to be able to show the people 10 years from now, look, we made a decision, but here, this is what we based the decision on. That's important. You need to be able to substantiate to the future and future councils, look, we made a decision, but this is how we made it. You don't want to go, we made a decision because people sent us emails. That's not how you make decisions. I'm sorry. You make decisions based on data. Make your decision based on the data. Hate it for that. That's it. Go ahead. Any other questions?
Yes, it's my turn.
Sure, go ahead, Bill.
Thank you for sharing all that information. Let's go back to the beginning. We all were assigned particular tasks and volunteered to be on the MPO, of which Steve and yourself, this gentleman here just started. And I believe that if we look at the charter, which is what I have here in front of me, page 10, and I don't know, other than one meeting that I personally attended, I guess it was the one before last here in City Hall. I was there for that meeting. I've also had a lot of constituents question, similar to what Steve Slacka said, about who's representing who and why are we still continuing along this thing. So I went to the charter, and on page 10, and I don't know what went on other than the one meeting that I was there. I've asked for the transcript. I've asked for the minutes from this past meeting, because I don't know what was said. You just explained it to me.
Yeah.
But I have asked to have the meeting, not the tapes. I want it in writing.
Well,
So I
then
can-
you're
so
going to
I-
have to get it transcribed, because they don't have it in writing.
Well, I've already requested it, so I assume it's going forward.
You can request it, but they don't exist unless you want it
Well,
transcribed.
Wait, let me, I don't want to get into a back and forth.
Okay.
Here. It doesn't serve any useful purpose. If we look at when you represent the city, whether this is a majority or minority opinion of the council, even if the council member is representing his or her own personal opinions, remember that this still may reflect upon the city as an organization. The next paragraph. The council member is representing the city. The council member must support and advocate the official city position on the issue, not a personal viewpoint. Third paragraph. The council member is representing another organization whose position is different from the city. The council member should withdraw from the voting on the issue if it significantly impacts or is detrimental to the city's interest. Council members should be clear about which organizations they represent and inform the mayor and council of their involvement. So my point is, I don't know, but I do know the vote was 5-2. That's a majority. That should be advocated by the people that, who's ever on there, should advocate the position of the majority. And I think the people out there in Bonita Springs are not sure that that happened. That's where I am. So I don't have other than...
Well, I can answer that for you, and it's pretty clear. The second part of what you read there it doesn't mean that organizations like the MPO. I think that's when we're advocating for some other interest that we have there, some other actual personal interest or whatever that inures to our personal benefit. So far as individuals, you're right. When the city council votes on something, they vote on it and they take a position, and we always make that clear. And we've always tell people that, you know what, when you represent the city, when you send a letter out, that should be it.
Stand fully.
It should be it, and that's the vote. And every time that I've spoke at the MPO, I've let them know, this is what city council said. But I have to tell you something about myself personally. If anybody here thinks that I will do anything that I think is just completely, if I will ignore every fiber in my body and do something that I think is completely wrong and detrimental to the city because anybody tells me to, you are gravely mistaken. Now, I am going to use every power in my possession not to be swayed when it comes to that. I know that the council took a position for it, and I made it clear to them. Pete made it clear to them. Everybody made it clear to them. But if you'd have told me up there, we make a vote up there that you're going to run around and up there with your pants off, I'm not going to do it. If you go up there and ask me to do something that is illegal, I'm not going to do it. If you go to tell me to do something up there that's going to cause irreparable harm to this city's reputation, that's going to cause irreparable physical damage to this city, I'm not going to do it. And if the public has a problem with that, they have a cure for that. But I'm telling you that that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use my judgment, because when you look on there, you'll also see that when people vote for you, they're hoping that you use that judgment. And I'm going to continue to use my good judgment. But when it comes to that process, I'm going to respect the process. I'm going to respect the law. But when it comes right down to it, when it's time for council to make a decision, when it's the actual moment, when it's time for council to decide, I'm going to support that decision 100%. And I'm going to use everything in my power to promote that, as long as it's moral, ethical, and reasonable.
The only point I'm making, Ben, is it must support and advocate the official city position, whoever that person is on this board. We must do that. We may not agree, but we must do that, because that's what the charter says.
Well, I agree with the charter. May I?
Yeah.
Then how come we have so much dissension in the ranks here today, or about the whole thing?
I'm not dissenting.
Why? How about let's the people out there that have been sending emails, talking about what's going on. We need clarification that we must stand together when we have a vote, and you have to represent the people, not any individual circumstance. You have to remove yourself from it and be the person that supports the council, because the council voted. And Peter's point is that all we've ever asked for is for us to have the advocation of the person represented. I only attended one meeting. I don't have enough information to say, but the impression out there is that we're not working together, we're pulling apart because of certain words that have been said. I only was at one meeting, Steve, and I did not hear anything that was advocation, at least that I observed. At the meeting I was at. I have not been to any other meetings. But I want to get through this. This is the hardest thing for me to do since I've been on council, to discuss something so frank. I don't know how else to express it to you.
Well, I think you should be frank about these things, but, you know, you're starting to impugn my integrity because
Well,
I said,
no,
well, no, wait,
no,
let me
please.
finish, let me finish, I let you
Go ahead,
finish.
Steve.
I let you finish. You know, I said to Michael, when he first asked the question, did you represent council at the MPO? I said, yes, I did. And once you get through the transcripts, I think you'll see, I said, the city council and the citizens of Bonita Springs are not in favor of a flyover. So if that's not advocation, I apologize, but that's what I said because I do think that does advocate for what the city and the city council want.
Okay, well, the only way to clear the air is to express that, and I think the press is here, and if that's fine. I don't know.
I know you don't.
I don't know.
So you're speaking without knowledge.
Well,
but look at the.
well, wait a minute, hold it. When someone calls me on the telephone and says, Bill, we don't want the flyover, and here's the reasons why, and I have numerous, I'm sure we all got the same
I did.
emails.
I have 50, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anybody that's advocated that we should do it. Out there no one said we should build the flyover, none.
Nobody's
Well,
advocating on council.
Actually, that's not true for me. Anyway, I've heard people, but you know what?
Who?
Don't.
I've heard.
I'll send you the email.
Okay.
But anyway, but that's not the point. The point of the matter, to your charge, is that Steve or I, we didn't do our. Wait a minute. We didn't do our job because we didn't sufficiently advocate the position of council. It's a fair.
The appearance of that is there.
It's a fair conversation, right? We have 2 votes on the MPO. But when you go to any of these other extra committee meetings or whatever like this, there's a conversation there. What is there, 14, 17 members on the MPO?
Big.
Right? Big. There's a lot of people there. And there's a conversation. And in the context of that conversation, if you're telling us that we're supposed to, when there's a conversation and people are making complete sense and they're telling us that as the MPO, well, this is the broader aspect, that we're supposed to ignore any rational, logical means. No, I'm sorry, I can't vote like that. I'm a thinking, rational, lucid human being. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. I think that you ask anybody that sits in on a conversation like that, and I would come back to City Council. City Council, I told them what you said there, but I got to tell you, and you know what? Told them what your position was, but you know what? That's just not the way the system works. You may express the regard that no, we want you to send the money back to the federal government, and they may say we can't do that. We can't do that. What am I supposed to do? Just kick and scream? No, I don't want to make a fool out of us. I don't want to make us look stupid. I got other things. The city's going to want me to be able to promote an agenda other than this. This isn't the end of the world. We've got a lot of other things that we're going to need to promote on that MPO. We've got a lot of respect from there. And I think that, Mike, if you can see anything on there, they respect the city of Bonita Springs there. They're going to want to continue to do that. You're going to want them to continue to do that. Are we going to want to waste everything on this one issue? Which, by the way, you're going to get exactly what you want, which is what you want is no flyover. You're going to get that. But you're not going to get it in the way that you want. You're not going to get it by making the thing go away. You're not going to get it that way. And that's the whole crux of it. If your goal is no flyover, you'll get there. You'll get there.
No, I don't have a goal about a flyover. I happen to represent constituents, and everyone else up here does too. And I do not have anyone that's ever said to me, or in writing verbally, about that. So we all represent people, and we must respect the people. And when we do that, we're a better organization for it. And I don't have any. I try to do these things in a way that keep it calm and so forth, but I do think that I've done the best I can to explain to the people that 97% of the time, we work together completely up here, but when we get to the other 3%. But when it involves major financial decisions affecting millions, hundreds of thousands of people that have businesses here that can envision so much difficulty, just that alone aside. By the way, the traffic right now is quite is nice for 8 months. It really it's a much smaller problem to solve, other ways to get around. It's lovely to drive around now. I didn't even mind waiting this year. It must have took maybe 2 minutes to get through a red light. I wasn't frustrated by that because I got a chance to listen to the birds. So it's a situation that's so small in terms of the total picture of here. And Bonita is a wonderful place. It always has been. The people up here serve because they want to, and they've been elected to do that. And I don't have any, I just like to get, for every assignment we have individually, I know everybody applies themselves to do the best job possible. But this issue has gotten out of hand, and I just trying to bring it back into a perspective that I don't have. And please, Steve McIntosh, there was no intention on me to say anything other than, can we discuss this in a mature manner here and be able to come to a to answer Peter's questions, who did all the letter writing. He's a well-intentioned individual also, and is looking out for the people that live in the city. Thank you.
Okay.
Ben?
Pete?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at this, and I'll be the first to admit, I'm not an engineer, but we all know that intersection. Let's think about it for a second. You have Perkins on one corner, you have the gas station on another corner, with presumably gas tanks under there. You have a drugstore in one corner, and you have a restaurant on the other corner. If you look at the east side of that road, there's also water and drainage through there. So let's just talk through this a second. Yes, we know this study's moving forward, and I'm not an engineer. I want to repeat that. But good common logic, if not a flyover, what type of a road are we going to design where the land's already wet on one side, there's gas tanks on another side of the street, and a drugstore literally, and with the setback requirements? If not a flyover, what? There's really not room to do much of anything. So that's another way to look at it, I would think. One man's opinion, one person's opinion. And the second thing I want to make, I did hear a comment from Mike that somebody in Cape Coral made a comment that they were sorry that they stopped a study. So obviously there's a precedent in place to stop a study, and I would like to explore what that process is. Okay, Carl?
Okay, any other discussion? Who started this mess anyway?
Me.
Oh, okay. All right. Do you have anything else for us?
I'm good.
All right, Mike, go ahead.
Well,
You have anything?
yeah.
About anything?
About anything.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to say congratulations to Justin. Thank you for being here and all your help here, and wish you the best in your future endeavors. And going to the study, like I said, I am 100% against the flyover, but I do want to see the study go through because they will give us other options. Increasing turn lanes, lengths, signal timing. There will be other options that I can't think of myself right here, but that's what they do, and that's why there is the study. So that's why I believe the study should go through, and I'd like to see the outcome of the study. And from everybody I've talked to, they said that they've heard from everyone, but even the secretary said that he's gotten numerous emails. Every email that we've gotten, he's gotten. And that's why he looked for direction if we wanted it canceled, or if the MPO wanted it canceled. But at the same time, they gave reasons why it shouldn't be canceled, and because we need to look at the other options for that intersection. We don't need to let it just sit there like it is and have problems 35 years down the road. That's the one thing, now that I'm on the MPO, it's hard to wrap my head around, is thinking a third of a century out on things. it's dumbfounding, running a business. I see a problem, I fix the problem. Yeah, but, with this, we have multi-year studies and then other considerations coming in, public outcry, things like that. But I believe in the end we will get what we want as a city. And like I said, as far as I'm concerned, it will not be a flyover.
All right, thank you. Do you have anything else for us?
Well, I do want to invite everybody out to look at Columns Trail. I was there for the ribbon cutting, and later that day I did take my sons out there, and we walked around for a couple hours, and we had a lot of fun. It was a beautiful place to go to. Nice, relaxing place. You can, really kind of just think to yourself out there without all the other distractions.
I'm making a note to go there. Thank you very much, Mike.
And welcome back, Steve.
Thank you. Okay, Bill, what do you got for us today?
I said enough.
Okay, sir.
Welcome back, Steve.
No, Billy, you haven't said enough.
Say more.
Thank you.
All right, I just have one thing real quick here, and it's about access to the waterways. I'm going to make a bit of a pitch here. I don't know if it's even appropriate at this time, but I'm going to do it anyway. But I am getting quite a bit of, since we have become the Hyatt and the marina property in that area there, and Spring Creek and the rest of those. It's come to more and more to our attention that there isn't any real public access. It's kind of a crime when you think about it for the general public not to be able, in that beautiful section of the community, which is kind of our responsibility now, so to speak. There's no place really for people to be able to launch a kayak or to put a boat in or to fish or to do anything like that. And I would like to see at some point in time, and I'm just bringing this up just not as an action item, but just to get maybe permission for maybe staff, just a kind of a head nod for staff to look into it. Maybe we should look and see if there are opportunities for us to find places where where we may be able in the future to create facilities like that down there. Do you think that that's something that we should be doing? Because, I mean, the people there have been really nice. Even the people from Estero have been really nice and say, hey, we're cool with what you did, but could you be sure that there's some access that's reserved for the public? I think that's a reasonable expectation. Would that be all right?
I think that's more than okay, and I think I would just maybe layer on that, probably two separate issues, but in that vein, if we look at our beach, certainly we've had some discussions with folks. We have an amazing beach, but could we enhance it more? Could we figure out parking? I mean, I know there's not a lot of land there. Could we make a little more green space? Could we make it an area more desirable for public access to the water? So in that vein, yes, I think we absolutely should.
And I think that an ideal location for enhancement of the facilities of those kind are out towards Lover's Key, out on that causeway. I think that a lot of those areas may lend themselves to being able to have access via like the Sanibel Causeway. I mean, that's like a great recreational area for the people at Sanibel. And you know what? You've got lots of area, lots of places to park. There's no residential places near there. I think maybe there's something we could look into. So if you just kind of a head nod, if we can allow our staff to look into that would be great. Because I think look where we live. Isn't that supposed to be what we're about? So is that okay, Council? Good.
Exclusive of Hickory Island.
No, yeah.
Exclusive of Hickory
Yeah,
Island.
right, yeah. We're not going to monkey with those guys. No. No. All right, thank you very much, if that's okay. And that's all I have for right now. And is everybody else done?
To approve the minutes?
Move to approve the minutes. There's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second to approve the minutes. Roll call, please.
Councilman Longcart?
Aye.
Councilman McIntosh?
Aye.
Councilwoman Martin?
Aye.
Councilman Slackton?
Aye.
Mayor Nelson?
Aye.
Councilman Simmons?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Okay, Carl, do you have anything else for us? Staff members? Good. Public comment. Anyone wishing to speak at this time, please come forward.
Yes, I'm Deborah McLean, publisher of the Banana Peel, and I read Mr. McIntosh's proposal about breathalyzers in the paper. I read the green sheet, and I consider it a ploy to get elected when the next elections come up. I would like to read to you something that Ronald Reagan said. We must reject the idea that every time a law is broken, society is guilty, rather than the law breaker. It is time to restore the American that each individual is accountable for his actions. And I would like to bring that up. I do believe that ethics are important, and I do keep a paper trail on all of you, potential candidates, and all of the elections locally, not so much state or national, but county, Collier and Lee, and here in the city, whether it be city election, fire election, or even board of the BSU election, which I don't know why it's so politicized, but it is. So I would like to let people know that when the banana peel goes out, you will be written up by your actions and your records, your public records. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else this time? Please come forward.
Well, good afternoon. And I would like to close this with my usual positive comments. First of all, I was so excited to hear about Global Tech LED relocating here. This is just exactly what we've all been waiting for. Light, clean, industrial, bringing jobs, and not only that, going into an empty, available building. And I think we owe a lot of thanks to the Chamber, Christine, and the Economic Development Committee for all their hard work. And not only is the city streamlining, the city staff has to be commended too, because you've made it so much easier for people to get their permitting at all. And the Economic Development Committee has been good about that. They've also, I was happy to hear about them assisting Shaw. As I said, this is what we need. And I remember, not all of you were on council when this was first proposed and they asked for money. There was a lot of hesitation. There was a lot of outright against it, and a lot of criticism from the residents. No, don't give them any, don't. Well, look what's happened. It hasn't happened overnight, but it's happened, and I think it's wonderful. So, as you found out when you went to Tallahassee, oh yeah, we know who you are. I hope everybody in the U.S. looks at Bonita Springs and we say, come on down. You're going to be assisted by staff here. They're streamlining your permitting, and you're going to find a wonderful place to locate. And secondly, I'm sorry Mr. Newman left. I want to welcome he and his wife as new residents of the city. And with his expertise and his knowledge, I hope he becomes a part of council meetings and helps us with the decisions that have to be made. And I especially liked his comments on the radiation. There's a lot of rumors that go around, I've heard them. In the same vein, look at all the parents that are not immunizing their children now because a study came out of the UK years ago that it was causing autism. And look what's happening with the non-immunization now. Measles is making a comeback. I also read recently in Hawaii, they have more dentists there than anywhere in the world per capita, and the worst dental problems. And you know why? No fluoridation in the water, except on the military bases. And that rings a bell. How many people are against fluoridation in water? So if people will listen to the experts instead of the rumors, they'll be much better off. This has been a very interesting meeting. Thank you very much.
Okay. Anyone else this time? Please come forward.
William Lewis, let's talk Bonita politics. Just a couple of my own comments on this flyover. We have on the council 2 members who are in the MPO, and both are for the flyover. Okay, fine. I suggest that you think or gasp the city of Naples. They fought the flyover right up until the shovel went in the ground. And that was on Golden Gate and the intersection. And they fought it. The council was 110% against it. The study continued, and the end result, the flyover went in. I don't mean to puff your bubble, fellas, but the study cost a ton of money. Mayor Nelson was instrumental in getting the study going, correct? Correct, okay. So why should they stop the study? I know it's all again. Why don't you guys take another vote and see if these two will go along? Because they said in their comments, we explained it thoroughly that the council is against it. They never said, but we're against it. Think about it. Okay. That's all I got to say. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Flyover, I believe, will go in.
Thank you very much. Anyone else this time like to speak?
Hello, everyone. My name is John Pano. I have a company called CGD Kayaks, or Calusa Ghost Tours, and I'm in Riverside Park. One of the things I just wanted to say today is I really didn't plan on saying anything at all, but Ben brought up the topic of access to the water, and that is something that's very dear to me. One of the things in this area that's happened over the season is access to the water for a lot of vendors has stopped, and now they're all out there trying to find spaces. This has become a very, very desirable place. I brought with me this Gulf Shore Life magazine. Just come out for June. There's the Imperial River.
Nice.
Okay? That's right off of Riverside Park. People are coming here from all over the world to experience these waters, and we need to make them accessible. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else this time? All right, for the record, I'm glad that Mr. Lewis came up to the podium and decided to lie in person for a change. Steve, are you for a flyover?
No.
I am not for a flyover. I am for studying the intersection. So I wish he'd have stuck around. And also, the rest of what he said, take it with a grain of salt or take it as the truth. It's up to you. That's what critical thinking is all about. I just ask you to consider the facts, not somebody shooting their mouth off. With that in mind, Council, thank you very much.
And on that note.